Hello, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Entropy from Hamburg, Germany, and I was caught in the big hardcore and techno wave that went down on Germany in the early and mid-90s. And here I am. So yeah, I produced plenty of tracks that got released all over the world, played parties, met people, get featured in magazines. Nowadays I also have other projects, like the Hardcore Overdose electronic magazine of underrated hardcore adjacent genres, or the labels that you already mentioned, Doomco Records, Synoco, and Omnico Records. Doomco Records for the Rooted Seed label. It's for Doomco music, dark techno, industrial techno, dark hardcore. Synoco Records has a speed limit. Tracks must be 130 BPM or less. The style is not so important then. Very slow hardcore techno as long as it has a prominent steady beat. We get some really slow ones on there, like 1 BPM, hardcore and gabber. And Omnico is a label for all styles of music, and I mean it. It's mostly centered on retro gabber and speedcore or 90s style. But I would also like to have a folk music release on it one day, or VGM, or tribal chanting, a pioneer ballad record. It's all possible.
Thanks for providing that context about your different labels. I've also been following the Hardcore Overdogs online magazine for a while now, and I would recommend anybody that is into underground hardcore to check it out. I really want to discuss the concept of labels. What do you think is the purpose of labels in underground electronic music? Do you also make a similar distinction between bigger indie labels, which operate more like a business, as opposed to free net labels, which serve more as a promotional tool?
No, I think that's a big misconception for newcomers. As you know, I released on some bigger and very famous labels, haha. And it's just like with the indies. They hit me up for some tracks and I shoot some stuff over there and maybe I get a payment after a year, but most of the times it's not the case, haha. There's no real word of business in music as far as I have seen. The big labels are just chill freaks like us, you know? So, how important are labels? Well, I come from a world where music was on labels. Nowadays there are artists who release without labels, and I guess they put their stuff on social media. But yeah, I think labels are vital. On our labels, we don't just put a release out by an artist. It's tied to a mythology, a theme, a concept, a tribe, and uprising. Of course, not for every single artist, but I guess artists are drawn to Doomco or Synoco or Omnico Records because they catch this vibe, you know?
Yes, I understand that. Many of my songs and releases I put out on your labels typically have some sort of theme or concept to go along with the music. A lot of artists listening to my show, Stygian, and submitting tracks are underground artists who haven't been in the electronic music scene for nearly as long as you. What advice do you have for these artists in pursuing their goals in the audio industry?
Man, girl, boy, woman, whatever you are. Just do the thing, never compromise. You won't make friends by sucking up to others. I see a lot of artists now who are like, oh, the industry is like that and we need to adapt. Fuck the industry, fuck this idea. And you can do what you want, and labels, promoters will come crawling to get your stuff, you know? Nobody's interested in you if you do things like 100 artists did before you.
That's a similar approach that I've taken. I just kind of do my thing without trying to follow any trends in the audio industry. I wanted to talk about concepts like philosophy, political theory, and spirituality as it relates to music. I know that these are things you sometimes discuss on your blogs, and I am wondering how your own personal political and spiritual beliefs have influenced your music.
On my home planet, well, I mean in the 20th century, and I don't really want to sound like an old dog now, woof woof aroo, music generally was connected to everything, to culture, to politics, to religion, to sex. Even the music of the enemy of the old folks, just that theirs was connected to a very different culture. So don't grasp this concept that some people do music just to get money. I guess money is their religion, culture, and politics then. When it comes to religion, my dear listener, I now bless you by the almighty dog head of the overdogs. Woof woof ow. When it comes to politics, I'm an anarchist and I want to overthrow the world's government, but I think this can be done in a very peaceful way too, or best with music.
What do you think is the future of electronic music? Where do you think electronic music is heading in both the near and far future, and how do you think technological advancements will change how we make electronic music?
The future of electronic music might be the past. What is it? And who lives in the house of Laura Palmer now? Either way, it's very interesting that there is now a new generation of young dog artists that are interested in the sounds of hardcore and gabber again. Because I think hardcore and gabber died before the time, and there was still a lot of things that could be done. This style could have been pushed farther ahead, more experimental. And the new generation seems to just do that. And I guess this might be the future. What is it? Again, Laura. There's fire where we are going.
That's an interesting point that you bring up. Personally, I'm interested in making songs that are influenced by early rave music and rave culture. It seems like a lot of new producers are interested in re-exploring past sounds, but with a modern, more experimental twist. What equipment do you use to make music? Do you use hardware, or do you only make music in the box? What is your favorite digital audio workstation?
Yes, I make music in the box, in the big brain box of mine. Haha. I use mostly software jazz. An old tracker DHW called Jazz Bass is the piece where I produce most music with. But I also like to improvise and use as many methods available. For example, on the second day of Christmas, I went for a walk and I heard people hitting the ice with. Don't know how they did it, but it was quite the rockers. So I sampled it, looped that sound, it became a 14-minute long track.
That's a very unique approach to making music, because Jazz Buzz is a DAW that most people have never even heard of. I cycle mostly between FL, Ableton, Logic, and Reason. I also like the idea of doing more field recordings and incorporating that into your tracks. One of the genres you're most known for representing is doomcore. How do you define doomcore for somebody that has never heard of it before?
Do you like scary movies? With Drew Barrymore and the rest of the gang. No, how I see it is that hardcore split into various styles that deliver the rockers in very different ways. And doomcore is very melancholic and it's dark and your girlfriends will like it. But it's still hardcore. Oh, and lately, I noticed there are some really downer nihilist types roaming the doomcore scene. I get that, respect that. But doomcore was actually started by some funky party guys from Germany on the label Planet Core Productions. And yeah, they were hardcore and dark and twisted, but they knew how to enjoy life at its fullest too, So enjoy doomcore and keep smiling.
The world is doomed. Let's dance. What other artists are some of your biggest influences? Are there any types of music that isn't electronic that still influences you in making electronic music?
Yes, of course. After the millennium, my interest in hardcore and techno was not 100% central anymore. I love indie rock and pop or vintage doo-wop. Also a bit of Karl-Heinz Stockhausen or Schönberg. Hey Arnold. I like Taylor Swift. For real, she sings about darkness at the end of the world, or wanting to destroy everything and everyone. Dressed in sugar-coated melodies. That's quite hardcore, isn't it? Coldplay is great. Kim Wilde is wild. She's a Scorpio babe. There's also some kind of wormhole of late 70s and 80s music that is totally weird and often more nihilistic than a lot of hardcore. Fat Gadget, Andy Schneeflied, Dalek Eye, Modern Ian. Oops, I get that might be borderline electronic again then.
Let's talk about parties and performing live. What kind of events have you ever DJ'd for in the past? Have you ever performed live? Where do you think electronic music performance is headed? Will there be more improvisation in live electronic sets, as opposed to artists only mixing tracks that have already been recorded?
Have I ever been mellow? Have I ever smiled? Yes, I played a lot of gigs at Choose a Billion, at the Fuckboy in Billion. Sometimes I played in front of thousands of people and sometimes in front of empty clubs. When I see some performances on internet video today, I'm negatively amazed about how tame everything is. These walk on stage, do the thing, everyone cheers, cut the end. I think hardcore should be controversial. I want you to come up on stage and then you vomit all over your equipment. Or you dress up in non-Euclidean geometry. Something that shocks people, that is out of the ordinary. Not playing hit tracks to a docile crowd. But I think the new generation is more interesting again in that regard. And regarding the technical side, more improvisation would not hurt. And more attempts to get beyond the more electronic music circuit. Sing during your performances, hit a gong, get the East European Army Corps on stage and let them accompany you while you perform your music. Perform outside the box.
I also like the idea of doing more during the DJ set. Eventually, I would also like to get on the mic when I DJ and do some MCing as well. Regarding music in general, do you think anybody is capable of making music, or do you think this requires a certain innate musical ability?
I do not only believe that everyone can be a great ingenious artist, but that everyone is a great ingenious artist already right now. They just don't realize it. It's because there's structures and standards, a hierarchy in art, so to say. With famous artists and media and organizations telling you what is art and what is not, which rules you should follow, and people think they can't follow this, and their art is lesser than other people's creations because of that. But I don't think so. If you follow your own inspiration, creativity, if you follow your star, your art, music, painting, gardening, whatever, will be brilliant. It's actually a minor code problem, unquote, when running the labels. I listen to people's music and reach out to them, telling them we would like to release their music. And some of them go, oh, sorry, but I don't think my music is good enough for release yet. I think, what the hell makes you think that? It's brilliant.
Speaking of good versus bad music, let's talk about values. How do you define a good techno or hardcore techno song? What traits or qualities would make a song less good in your eyes?
I think this is entirely subjective. Hardcore is actually a good topic because there were and probably are a lot of people who go hardcore is bad for listening, but good for dancing. So they might not utterly like this kind of music or think it's well produced. But for them it suits its purpose in order to dance at a rave. And other music could fit other purposes, like making you sad, happy, mellow, or being the background of a video game or movie. So one track can be good or bad for you depending on the occasion and on your individuality. I think in the end, in an objective sense, all music is good, and whether you like it or not is down to subjective opinion and values.
What advice do you have for people who are new to electronic music and want to start producing music?
Please do not listen to what others say. There's a whole legion of people out there who jump on newcomers and say their stuff sucks and that they should stop producing and so on, and that's not true. Also, like I said above, a lot of people think if they copy others or follow contemporary trends, they can go ahead. The opposite is true. Even if you do believe that you need to follow a trend or fit in to get somewhere, think about this. The music, the style, the attitude that are hot right now will be cold in 3-4 years. So if you write that you will drown in 3-4 years, do you want that? And here's also something I wish someone had told me early on. The actual impact of your music is often invisible. Nowadays people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm in Canada, Russia or La Paz, and I liked your early music and always was a fan. And I never knew that. I might have thought early on, oh, nobody likes or listens to my music. And if I had given up at that point, I would have never known. Tomorrow never knows. So please don't give up.
I understand what you mean about music having an invisible impact. I often feel like I'm just producing music into a void since I don't get a lot of comments or feedback on my songs. But then every once in a while I'll get a message or comment from someone in another country that says they've been listening to my music for a while. Finally, what advice do you have for artists that already have some self-releases or songs put out by free net labels and want to take their career to the next level by signing with a bigger indie label?
Yes, as I said, that seems to be the impression that there is a world of bigger and more professional labels. I read some bigger labels, but I'm like quote signed unquote with them. These label folk are just chill freaks like us. Also, with the internet, you can easily reach millions or billions of people without labels. I think we all know songs or artists that did that. This might contradict my earlier statement, right? Well, I think labels are important for the scene, for the overall music structure, for us, but not necessarily for artists if we want to make a hit and nothing else. Either way, it either happens or doesn't happen. The labels reach out to me, and I don't think there was a magic trick on how I could have gotten a release on these labels in another way. So just follow your star, follow your inspiration, follow yourself.
Now we're going to move on to the next part of the show, which is an interview with the artist Hecatonchires, or Heka. For those wanting to look his music up, that is spelled Hecatonchires. I started talking to him online probably back in 2022 during my chronic illness life, which was around the time he started transitioning away from speedcore and extratone and more towards genres like doomcore, slowcore, and dark jungle. Let's dive into the interview. Thanks for coming on to the show. Do you first want to start by describing a bit about your music project and your goals in music?
Thanks, Ethan. So, my music project, I'll just call it Heka from now on. I began producing in early 2020 during the height of the COVID pandemic. I just needed something to spend my time on, and I picked up FL Studio. Most of my early years were spent just making garbage speedcore and extra tone, and I pretty much knew nothing about music theory. 2023, I started a net label called Moros, where I self-release most of my new stuff. For my goals, I'd like to put together some full-length albums and get them released on a different label, probably like Dead Zone, so I can branch out a bit. I think I am close to having one done, but it's mostly just a compilation of my best tracks.
One of the intended audience demographics I'm trying to appeal to is artists who are just getting started making music and want to better navigate the underground electronic music scene. You run a label called Moros, which I helped co-found. Do you want to provide a bit of context about the label to the listeners? What is your goal with the label?
Yeah, so Moros is a free net label on Bandcamp, and it's open to just about any submission. I'll feature anything that's dark and moody, and as long as it fits in the genres of jungle, hardcore, trance, or doomcore, it will probably get posted. I wanted to cast a wide net of obscure genres and keep them all together, even if, say, like the jungle and doomcore communities don't have much to do with each other. I wanted to maybe create a bridge. Moros is not a super professional label, and it's welcome to small producers. I know when I was new to music, I was quite scared of getting rejected by basically everybody. And so now that I own a label, I don't want to feel like I have to turn anyone away.
When you first started producing electronic music, you were into faster styles, like speedcore and extratone. Your sound shifted over the years to slower variants of hardcore techno, including doomcore and breakcore. What influenced this shift in your style?
Honestly, I just grew up. I mean, I started making music when I was just 14, and I didn't have any idea what I was actually doing. So, styles that are focused entirely on just raw beats per minute, like extra tone, can only be interesting for so long. You can only push the envelope of BPM before it all just devolves into the same thing. As a kid, I thought this was like the coolest thing ever. I could make a track with 1 centillion beats per minute, but someone else could just make their own track that's ever so slightly faster than me. And I mean, at that point, numbers aren't, they're not conceivable anymore. So, starting about 3 years ago, I changed gears and started making stuff that was, at a danceable speed and focused on tracks that took a lot more effort to make and had a lot more detail and also were just a lot slower. And ironically, I found that more interesting.
Do you think Dark Jungle will ever get a proper revival?
No, I don't believe Darkseid will ever come back, and that's okay. It had a brief moment of massive popularity in 1993, but times have changed, and that kind of flash in the pan just won't repeat. I do think Dark Jungle could evolve with the introduction of weirder samples and instruments. Some of my tracks use like a sampled metal guitar. Um, New artists should be encouraged so that they can breathe new life into Darkseid, even if it doesn't actually get popular again. And in my opinion, honestly, like some stuff should just stay obscure, as um, there are plenty of genres that were ruined because they were popular, like trance, like house, and so on.
What is some advice that you have for producers who are new to making music and want to create this style?
So, for starters, keep the snares on beats 2 and 4. That sounds pretty basic and counterintuitive, as some Darkside tracks do use crazy chopping, but in my experience, having a relatively consistent beat plus the 808 bass bombs and rave stabs is just the most effective combination. Also, I'd just say just have fun with it. Like old school jungle was pieced together from lo-fi tape recordings, and it was always played fast and loose. There weren't hard rules on what made it good. And even quality control was a bit dodgy, but people loved it anyways. And today, I think we should try to do the same and just play around with weird samples and weird beats. And you don't need everything to have surgical precision. It just needs to sound good, and that's always what it was. Is it just with jungle you played it by ear and not by like any objectively good mix or good beat.
What are your preferred DAWs or VST plugins that you like using?
Oh, this is a fun one. So I currently use FL Studio 11 and Audacity. For VSTs, it's like the most basic thing possible. I pretty much only use Citrus and Toxic Biohazard and Rave Generator 2. I'm not one to use the best or most expensive tools for the job. In my opinion, a real artist doesn't need to lean on VSTs in order to produce, and I think they should be able to make at least playable music with just about any synth.
Let's talk a bit about non-musical inspiration. Is there anything you get musical inspiration from besides music? Maybe literature, movies, history, philosophy, etc.?
Sure, I'm pretty big into science fiction novels. My favorite books of all time would definitely have to be 1984, Brave New World, The Sheep Look Up by John Brunner, and A Clockwork Orange. For movies, it's gonna be the first Alien, Evil Dead, and Blade Runner. All of them just have awesome visuals and really harrowing atmosphere that's just timeless. Something about the abject bleakness in these works also just fits the style of art and music that I go for, and I do try to emulate them. I think about those books while producing, and I just, imagine, would this work as a soundtrack while reading it, and I'll adjust the mood if I'm like, oh, this is too uplifting, or this is, maybe trying too hard, and so on.
What are some things that you enjoy doing in your free time besides listening to and making music?
So, to be honest, I got a pretty boring everyday life. I mean, I do oil pastel and digital art, but that's mostly me copying other artists' works onto the page or illustrating a frame from a movie I liked, and it's not wholly original. Because of that, I've not shared anything publicly yet. Maybe if I craft my own little fictional universe, I could start sharing more. But for now, I keep it to myself because I just, to me, it's just fan art or just like me trying to learn a skill. So the training wheels have not come off yet. Other hobbies include, going on hikes, coin collecting, vinyl record collecting. Um, that definitely keeps my bank account from getting too full. I'll just say that.
What is the future of Moros? Where will it be in 5 or 10 years?
Honestly, I have no idea where Moros is going. Releases on the label are infrequent and probably will continue to be in 2026 and probably even 5 years from now. Back in 2023, I really wanted Moros to be a big label and afford vinyl pressing and CD pressing, and obviously that has not materialized. And thinking about it now, that wasn't a realistic goal. You'd need a pretty significant listener base to sustain physical releases like that, let alone even sell them. And it would take many years to build up, like, not just hundreds of followers, or like thousands or even tens of thousands. Because you think, like, how many people actually buy a record out of everyone who listens to you on Bandcamp? I mean, it just isn't that many percentage wise. So for the time being, Moros will continue the same pattern with new releases every couple months or just whenever someone emails me a demo.
Do you see value in investing money into your music and your label, or would you rather it remain a cheap hobby?
Music is definitely just a hobby for me. Like I said earlier, I tried making Moros into a real business at first. I did actually make over 100 CDRs of. Actually, it was your album, Ethan. It's Only a State of Mind. That's what it's called. I managed to sell, I think, 10 copies in the last 2 years, but overseas shipping outweighed the money that I was making selling it, so that really hurt. And selling physical media at a loss made me decide that trying to make music a full time job is just not for me. As for digital sales, I want to make paying for my music optional, and I don't think it's good enough to like force people to pay for it. And I always believe that the internet was a place where people should be able to just enjoy a thing and be able to download it without a paywall.
If you could go back and tell your younger self any advice about making music, what would it be?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I would tell my teenage self not to rush anything music wise. I used to beat myself up over a new track taking like 3 weeks to finish back in 2020, not realizing that it's not unusual for artists to go months or years without anything new. I'd assumed for some reason that like music was the same thing as being like just a regular YouTuber and that you needed to upload all the time. Um, and now, of course, I make one track like every 2 months or so, and that's fine. I do strongly believe in quality over quantity, so I would rather spend that much time on one really good and really detailed track than, you know, dump a bunch of low effort ones I'm not proud of or feel like I'm padding out an album.
Finally, what are some of your favorite songs and artists that have influenced you the most?
Oh, this is a fun one. So, my favorite artists would definitely include hardcore pioneers like Mark Trauner and Fifth Era. Also, as a kid, I loved Geometry Dash, and I think that's what got me into music as a whole. Some of those iconic tracks, like At the Speed of Light by Dim Rain 47, are still a major inspiration. For my all time favorite tracks, I'd probably go for Purple Moon by Miro, Army of Darkness by Pugwash, Drug Me by Jungle Pirate, and Voices by Face Hoover, and also Dark Rain by Current Value. Three of those tracks I've actually made remixes of as a form of respect to the artist. Anyways, thank you for the interview, Ethan.
Okay, so I guess I was just wanting to start out by um, just getting to know a little bit more about yourself as well as your music project. Do you want to explain to listeners like what got you into music as well as just a little bit about your music project?
Well, my name's Gregor. I'm Scottish, if you can't tell. What got me into music initially was probably influences from my parents, mainly stuff like the Prodigy, the Chemical Brothers, like early 90s rave kind of stuff that was big in the UK, as well as like other alternative stuff like Marilyn Manson, The Offspring, some like new metal, and that was like my first kind of introduction to music before I was really able to branch out and find my own kind of stuff. So when I first got access to the internet, I ended up the first two tracks I ever remember listening to was "Murder" by FFF, the breakcore artist, and "Refuse Bad Speedcore" by Complex.
Yeah.
So those two tracks have stuck with me for a while, and I'm thankful enough to have owned two of the only copies in the UK on vinyl. Um, but after that, I was just kind of jumping all over the place, trying to kind of find like any sort of genres that I could stick with. I went through a lot of different phases. I went through a big death metal and deathcore phase, which I still absolutely love the music and draw a lot of influence from. And I feel like in the speedcore scene, especially, a lot of people do draw influence from that. And like the crossover between crowds is pretty clear. Like at any events and stuff that I've been to, and like I've seen like been to like raves where people have been wearing metal merch, and I've been to like metal concerts where people have been wearing rave merch. But what mainly got me into my music project was when I started DJing when I was around 17. I was mainly into jump up drum and bass because that was like when I first started partying, like around where I'm from, that was what was like everyone was listening to. And I found that the style of mixing with that kind of music, it's very focused on like double and triple dropping tracks. So it was almost like you were making a new track from just mixing. Like I knew about hardcore, but I wasn't really too into it. Like I still loved it, but I found it a lot more difficult to mix, I guess, for some strange reason. Just because a lot of like the breakdowns and stuff and like the long kind of interludes compared to like drum and bass is very all kind of structured the same, like the same kind of like 16 bars, like you can bring it into the but after DJing for a few years, about 3 years ago, I finally decided to get off my arse and decide to try and delve into production a little bit. So that's when the SoftOrchestra kind of moniker came about, and then this came about around the time where me and my ex-girlfriend, I was helping out with her club night at the time, and I ended up like getting really into the whole promotion side of things and like helping out with the flyer in and the just like the social media kind of stuff. And then with that has led to me starting up my own brand, which the debut night will be in April, which is Fetcore, which is if you don't understand what the name is, Fet is a like a slang term for amphetamine speed in the UK and in
Mm.
core, so it's basically speed core, like but
Oh, okay.
like a different like a play on words, like
Yeah, it's clever.
yeah, it was my friend DJ Short Kicks. It was kind of me, mine, and his shared idea to come up with the name. I was thinking of a few names, but then when he mentioned that, I was like, yeah, it definitely sticks. But then I was like, instead of a C, use a K instead of a so make it a little bit different. It looks, but I think it looks better in the logo as well. Like
So what exactly is Fatcore? Is it like a label or is it a promotional company?
so, it's pretty much everything. Like I'm aiming to try and make it as expansive as possible. Like I've been doing like a podcast series where I've had multiple underground DJs send me in mixes and stuff. I'm currently working on a VA for releasing on my Bandcamp, which is soon to be launched, and then of course, obviously the party that I'll be throwing on April 24th in Glasgow, Scotland, is the main focus.
So you mentioned speedcore and how it was kind of a play on words of the speedcore. What other kinds of music, especially like particularly electronic music, are you interested in promoting and releasing with Fatcore?
Mainly terror, breakcore, speedcore, anything fast, like, but at the same time, anything kind of underground and heavy. So even like noise music, like kind of like ambient drone kind of stuff, even some like hard tech, like free party kind of music that you would get here at like raves, at like illegal raves in the UK. There's like a big hard tech scene.
Yeah, I was actually kind of curious about then the some of the different music scenes because here in Arizona where I live, when I first started going to raves, then I first started going to warehouse raves, which were at the time they were 18 plus, and then desert
Mm.
raves, which there was like there's not really a lot of security. Um, and that was kind of more of its own underground scene and underground culture. And then once I became old enough to start going to bars and clubs, because here in the United States you have to be 21 to
Yeah,
get
bro.
into drinking establishments, then I
Mm.
started going to more techno shows here. And recently I've been doing more goth dance nights because there's a lot of goth dance nights in the valley. So I'm curious about like what the different music scenes are. You mentioned free techno parties, so I'm curious like what that is like, as well as if that's similar to like clubbing in the UK or if that's very different.
It's very different. So free techno parties are like they're illegal raves. Like they're not supposed to be on. Like there's no security. There's no like it's all DIY. Like people choose a location. Like crews will link up with like sound systems, set it up in a remote location, and then hope that they don't get shut down. Like I've been to like the last one I went to, my friends own a sound system, and the police ended up showing up and like taking the generators, taking the decks and stuff. But I wasn't actually introduced to that scene until a few years after. So obviously it's 18 here to be able to go clubbing and stuff. So like my first ever rave was when I was 18. I went and seen a Anger Fist, F Noise, Obsession, Deadly Guns, and can't remember who else was on the support, but it was a Masters of Hardcore club tour. And I remember like one of the first hardcore song that I remember hearing besides Refused Bad Speedcore by Complex and a few of the songs that I got into through like rhythm games was Street Fighter by Angerfist. So like just soon after my 18th birthday when I seen that Angerfist was playing in Scotland, which if you didn't know has got a very, very big back history and like massive hardcore scene, like big like large like big I mean even American producers like Lenny D, Rob G, like they all had their first international gigs in Scotland. Like
So it seems like the hardcore scene, for example, is bigger in Scotland. At
oh
least
yeah, definitely.
when I was talking with the owner of Sonic Scout Radio, the founder, he said that most of the people that are listening to my show are from Europe. And
Mm.
so I feel like mostly underground electronic music, at least what I consider to be underground, like techno and hardcore techno, and a lot of their different variants seem bigger in Europe. And then here, at least, if there is like kind of mainstream electronic music, it's usually more like uh, house or like, I guess I call it pop EDM.
I feel
Um,
like I see a lot of what is it, rhythm dubstep seems to be a big thing in the US. Like a lot of parties, like you get like what's it called, Lost Lands? Is it the big festival where they do like a lot of dubstep artists and stuff?
Yeah, Lost Lands, I think that was started by Excision. I don't really
Yeah.
care for rhythm. That is actually also really big here in, especially in Arizona, like in
Mhm.
desert raves, they play rhythm a lot. But I sometimes, I think it was actually Roscoe that first described it. He said that
Yeah, Roscoe, yeah. He like accidentally invented bro step and then it went like fucking too far and then Skrillex came out, everyone was listening to that like Knife Party around like 2011 or whatever, like everyone was listening, the whole world was listening to dubstep then, like well, dubstep quotation marks, like what I would class as proper dubstep would be art and artists like yeah, like Burial, Scream, like the older kind of like the more like atmospheric kind of like garagey sounding dubstep. Whereas
yeah.
like I feel like Bro Step's kind of like a bastardized version of it, but I like it. Like I do like I used to love it, but like now I wouldn't go to like a just like an exclusive like rhythm or Bro Step rave.
Yeah, I definitely like more of the old school kind of classic sound of dubstep, more than the new, or I should say newer bro step, and then even newer, well, still not really new, but newer rhythm.
Mm.
Um, I guess then I'm curious about uh different like tempos because typically dubstep is like 140
140,
BPM.
yeah.
Yeah, half tempo usually, and I typically a lot of older dubstep tracks are a lot more kind of like you said, laid back, atmospheric. So I when I first started making music, I also came from a background of speedcore and extra tone, but I've done spent a lot more time doing things like doomcore, which is kind of a slower variant of techno. So I'm wondering about like slower genres of music, of electronic music, how that it fits in with Fetcore, and then how that fits in with the bigger rave scene in the UK, and if that's as popular as the faster techno and hardcore.
So in the UK, techno and garage are massively popular, which are again like slower genres, like especially in England, like there are also bassline, which is like a kind of offshoot of garage with like a lot more wobbly kind of bass, which is usually around 140, is like absolutely huge in Northern England, as well as like yeah, like tech house and like house and pretty much the UK's got a really good. We're really lucky here for the music scene and festivals and stuff. Like there's so many choices and like so many different like unique kind of events that you can choose between. But
What about
when it comes to doomcore, like you were saying, when it like in terms of when it comes to slower music with fretcore, that is one thing that I would definitely like to introduce more. Like with your like I listened to your interview with Low Entropy, like he seems to
yeah.
be one of the more forefront guys in that, and I've actually started producing a doomcore track based around like kind of his style and like that kind of just kind of experimenting. As I said, like I'm very new to producing and I don't have like any music theory knowledge, so a lot of it is just messing around and like seeing what sticks and just throwing ideas about. So I've got so many unfinished tracks and like projects.
Regarding producing and also DJing, I'm curious about the equipment that you use, including both the hardware and the software. So, like when you're mixing, when you're DJing, what equipment do you use or software? And then when you're producing, what software or equipment do you use?
So when I'm DJing, I use a Pioneer FLX6 controller, which is a four-channel controller that you run through Record Box. And
Okay.
then when I'm producing, I use FL Studio as my DAW. And for so I've got two main aliases at the minute. SoftOrchestra, more focusing on like hardcore, speedcore, extra tone, that kind of stuff. And then another one called Qrotis, Qrotisif, which is I don't know if you've ever heard of a movie called Visitor Q. It's a Japanese horror movie. So it's basically that backwards. It's like the weirdest fucking movie ever made. So I just thought that would be a cool name to just reverse that and have that as my noise project. So for the noise side of things is where I more use the hardware, which I bought a custom noise box off of Etsy, which I run through a SP404, and then I have a Volca kick synthesizer and a Roland S1 compact synthesizer, all kind of hooked up. I've only just recently got them, so I haven't really recorded much with them. But in terms of hardware, yeah, that's all I'm rocking with at the minute. Like,
Yeah, that's really cool that you mentioned that you got that noise box because one of the things I want to eventually get in my studio is something similar. I don't remember exactly what the name of this model was off the top of my head, but it was from a brand called Resonant Circuits on Etsy.
mm.
And my plan was to basically record different kind of drone noises into my music sampler, which I think you said you have the 404, I have the circuit rhythm.
Yeah, the 404 Mark II, yeah, it's a brilliant piece of machinery, man. You can do so much with it. Like I've had it for like 6 months now, but I've barely even scratched the surface with it, to be honest. Like there's the possibilities with those kind of things are endless near enough. Like sampling is definitely take is a big part of my whole like basis in music. Like definitely like almost every song that I've ever produced has sampled some kind of like movie or TV show or like other song that I like.
Is that usually where you get influence then from like non-musical sources would be movies, TV shows, or are there other things, nature, animals, books, philosophy, any kind of topic from world history that influences you to make music?
I feel like emotions mainly, emotions as well as yeah, movies and TV shows especially. Like I've got like all like most tracks that I've had released have been like based around some of my favorite movies. Like I don't know if you've ever heard of a director called Gaspar Noé.
No.
It's an Argentinian director. Oh yeah, he released a movie. He's a couple movies. His most famous movie is called Irreversible. If you've
Hmm.
ever heard of that, it's a film that's shot backwards. It's a
That's interesting.
really intense movie, really dark movie. I'd definitely recommend watching it, like, but it's definitely not for everyone. And they also done a movie called Enter the Void, which is like,
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
That's
Kind of
my all-time
psychedelic
favorite
as
movie.
well.
Yeah, that's my all-time favorite movie. Like for a very strange reasons. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Like there is a lot of nothing going on, but like when I first watched it properly, I was going through like a lot of stuff personally, and like I was doing. I'm not gonna lie, I was doing a lot of drugs at the time, and like I had like almost an epiphany while watching that movie. And then I ended up writing a track, and it was one of the first tracks I got released on a net label that was based around like the opening to that movie.
So you mentioned emotions, and I know for me, this is something that I've talked about both on my show and then also just you can see in my albums that I've released, I've put some semi-autobiographical themes related to I grew up with a sleep disorder, which was caused from not type of sleep apnea, basically, and not breathing
Mm.
properly in my sleep. So that
Yeah.
was causing a lot of symptoms like depression, anxiety, brain fog, insomnia, stuff like that. Is it mostly positive emotions that inspire you to make music, or do you also have like negative life experiences that inspire you to create as well?
I'd say it's unfortunately mainly negative. Like I've not actually been diagnosed with any kind of disorders, but like that's something I've been working on for the last few years. Like I know, like I've knew for a long, long time that there's definitely a few things wrong, but I've just kind of either ignored it or like the health system in the UK, like because it's free, we have the NHS. It's like very underfunded. Like
Yeah.
they just a lot of people just get fucked about. Like I've tried for years to get like diagnosis for obvious like showing signs from when I was younger of like most people when they come up to me they're like, oh, you must be absolutely wired on cocaine. I'm like, no, I've definitely just got some kind of major undiagnosed ADHD or something, man. Like you can probably tell by like how fast I talk and stuff. Like I can't even drink a coffee without having a panic attack. Like any kind of stimulant just sends me fucking anxiety mode to the max. Like
All right. I'm curious too, like I guess then do you feel like maybe there's certain genres or certain subcultures in music that attracts people of that maybe are just more prone to like, for ADHD, for example, or in my
oh,
case, like
speedcore,
depression?
100%. Speedcore, 100%. Almost every speedcore DJ that I've spoke to is either undiagnosed or diagnosed ADHD. Like a lot of them, like most of them that I've like personally spoken to anyway. Like,
That's
and I
interesting.
feel
I
like
never really put that like correlation together. But that makes sense.
yeah, it's just because your brain's going so fast. Like you want the music to be fast, you know. Like that's why I feel like I've always been drawn to like extreme kind of music, like always, regardless of the genre. Like even back when, like before I was even really listening to hardcore, I would listen to like a lot of not like Merzbow, for example. Like the more I'm not too versed on noise music, like I don't know many, but like underground names, but like White House and like Merzbow stuff like that. I used to listen to a lot when I was younger, like before I got into like hardcore necessarily, like.
I'm curious then about when you first started producing music, you came from a background of DJing music. Did you feel like having a background in DJing helped you produce music? And also, what advice would you have for people who are like just starting out producing, like you were a couple years ago, that want to start making electronic music?
I'd say definitely when it comes to structure, it helps because obviously with DJing you're needing to count bars and stuff, and like once you get used to that, like kind of like getting used to the like, it's a lot of it's 4x4 when it comes to dance music. So it's like if you can get like a lot of people say like if you can count to four you can DJ, like as long as you know your music and you know your tracks and stuff. And any advice I'd give to someone is like who's thinking about producing is just do it. Like just do what you want, what you think. If you have any ideas, just try your best to jot them down, or like even if you just start a track, see what sticks. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Move on to another one. Like so that's why I say I've got like so many unfinished tracks and like unfinished. And I'm also very stubborn when it comes to like yeah, I don't have any music theory knowledge at all, and I kind of like refuse to watch tutorials or anything because I feel like then, like, if you're watching how someone else is doing something, you're just replicating something as opposed to just like, yeah, just like finding your own samples, trying to make your own sounds, like just messing around, really, like, is what I'd give the best advice. Like,
Do you ever want to get more education in music theory, or maybe even whether it's professionally, like from a college, or just learning on your own?
I was looking into maybe trying to go to music college, but because of I pretty much fucked myself up at school, and got like illegally chucked out with zero qualifications. So like for me to get into like any kind of like good college here that would do like any sort of creative stuff, I'd need to either pay a lot of money or like do more like basic like years more basic education that I'm not really interested in, to be honest. So I feel like I'm just gonna keep sticking with what I'm doing. I'm mainly like the production side of things kind of taking a little bit of a back seat since I've started the whole idea like Fetcore and like get like producing a night and like getting other people to be involved with the podcast and with the VA and stuff. But there's a few that I've got a lot of stuff in the works. Like
So you started DJing at a younger age, like you said, around 16 or 17, more with jump up music and drum and bass. But you didn't start producing until almost a decade later. So what is it that initially brought you to DJing, and then what is it that got you interested in producing after DJing, and why do you think it took that long to get interested in producing?
So I remember that definitely opened up FL Studio maybe like two or three times before I ever started DJing, like when I was like really, really young and I was just like, yeah, I don't understand how this works. So
Mm.
I just didn't really think about it. But what got me mainly into DJing was just yeah, a lot of the jump up tracks that I was listening to, like if you listen to a lot of old like 2015, 2016, jump up, like listening to one track by itself to me just doesn't sound right. And then when you watch back like mixes at like big jump up festivals in like Belgium and stuff, they're always playing like two or three songs at once because like you can definitely like double and like I say double and triple drop tracks like with jump up. So that was like what got me into DJing was like wanting to listen to the tracks that I liked the way that I wanted to hear them, as opposed to just having a playlist and having to hear them like one by one. I'd rather listen to like, oh, this drop goes well with this drop, and then like from that, producing just came out from yeah. I ended up like moving up to so I'm from the borders in Scotland where there's not really there was a small kind of like drum and bass scene. It's more like dub kind of reggae stuff here and like stuff like
Yeah.
that. A lot of like hippie festivals. Whereas when I moved up to Glasgow in 2022, I was more that was when I was like thrown into the deep end of like I'd obviously been to hardcore parties and stuff before, but like living in the city centre of Glasgow, which is where Dark Side Hardcore, which is the UK's longest running hardcore night and one that I've actually played at. I played a night there, supporting a lot of big up tempo DJs. I think it was the Dark Horror, F Noise, Unicorn on Ketamine, and Pinotello possibly were on that lineup, and that was like the last proper gig that I played, and that was a great gig, man. Like I played a full up tempo set, and then right at the end, I played a Curva Style Project. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I
He's
have
made
actually.
he made a track that's like a up tempo diss track using South Park samples. So like right at the end of my set, I just went from full up tempo to just pure splittercore like diss track against up tempo. Like half the room left, and then half the room were just like fucking yes, like
Yeah. Are there any other like memorable stories like that that you have about like things that happened at parties or events?
I'd say definitely when I organised the two Speedcore Italia parties with like under my ex-girlfriend's brand Error 404, like they were made like the like yeah like she was more wanting to do so they have like a multimedia kind of like AV style sort of stuff that they do like I'm not too sure what they're doing now, but like she wasn't really too interested in throwing parties anymore. But I noticed that like I was like, oh, this is definitely a possibility. Like there's a lot of artists like through Speedcore Italia. Like my first ever European rave I went to Ground Zero, I saw a Necro System in Groner live, and like it completely blew me away. Like it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I just remember like at that moment I was like, I need to bring this sound to the UK because I hadn't really because like speedcore parties have been a thing in the UK and like sporadically over the years, but I was like, I want this to be a thing and I want to be the person who's like bringing it over because there's a massive oversaturation, especially in Glasgow, with just all up tempo, man. I love up tempo, but I fucking hate it. Like it's like
You
it
love
got
it and
me
you
in.
hate it.
Yeah. Like it got me properly into hardcore through the like going to raves and stuff, and like mainly the first few years I went to, yeah, like the big artists were all the big, like this was like yeah, 2018. So when up tempo was still fairly new, and it was like less of the peak kick stuff, like more of the like kind of like crunchier, like just faster hardcore, man. Like, and then now it's just progressed. I feel like yeah, it's got a bit silly with a lot of it, and then like in Glasgow, a lot of the part like there's a lot of parties that have showed up that are just like not to put any shade on anyone, but like it just seems like a lot of low effort, like just booking their friends, getting their friends to come, like booking the same names and knowing that it'll sell well just because it's a trendy thing. Whereas with me with Fitcore, like as much as I know that it won't draw anywhere near as much attention, I know that the people who come to those kind of parties are there for the music and nothing else. Like it'll be a lot of older people, like a lot of people who have like, you know, been like in the scene for way longer, like as opposed to like a lot of these other parties, it's just like freshly 18, 19-year olds, like just there for the music, there for the drugs and stuff. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I could be very wrong. I stopped going to a lot of these parties in Scotland after I kind of got sick of it. And then I ended up, yeah, I've moved back from Glasgow since back to the borders.
What is one thing that you learned, or one thing that you realized, or more than one thing, about the rave culture or the underground electronic music scene in your home country of Scotland compared to other countries, whether other countries in Europe or the United States or and stuff like that?
Well, I'm not too sure to be honest. It seems that I've only ever been to Germany once for a party, and I've been to the Netherlands multiple times for parties. But it seems like, yeah, it seems a lot more cliquey in Scotland, and a lot more like people are there for show rather than the music a lot of the time. Like, which is why I'm saying with the parties that I'm going to be throwing, like I feel like that's the kind of stuff that like people aren't just going to buy a ticket for no reason to go and see like artists like for example the lineup for my party is Junkie Cut, Scat Injector, Hell Creator, DJ Smurf, a breakcore DJ from the UK called Monad, and then myself, which are all like in the speedcore and terror scene. They're big names, but in the overall hardcore scene, they're really not. Like especially even in Glasgow, like but a lot of people have shown interest, especially like I've actually had probably more interest from people in Europe seeing that I've like put this on. Like I've put Hell Creator and DJ Smurf doing like an exclusive back to back for the first time that was personally requested by Hell Creator. And I've had like people from like Romania, for example, be like, oh, like I'm going to come over to Scotland just for this. And I'm like, wow, that fucking blows me away. The fact that like, no, I've had like, yeah, like came from like, no, like obviously I had like people kind of knew me from like playing a few gigs here and there and like helping with the other parties that I used to help with. But then when it came to like doing it by myself and I was getting all this like positive feedback from like other promoters and stuff, I was like, this could really do something. Like, so I'm really looking forward to see what the future holds with it. Like,
How do you go about organizing these parties, or how do you reach out to artists?
mainly through Facebook, man. Like Facebook's been my main thing. Like I'm lucky enough to be in the speedcore scene where a lot of DJs, like all my favorite DJs, I've basically got on Facebook, and I can just message them personally. And
Yeah.
like obviously you need to work through agencies and stuff when you're booking some artists, but like most artists that I've booked, yeah, I've been able to just do it directly, just like message them on Facebook, like get them invoice me them personally, as opposed to like the only other big agency that I've really worked with in terms of like actually having to do it professionally is obviously Speedcore Italia and the Ridge Bookings, who they've got a lot of big artists on their label, like they've like Buzz Fuzz, the Groner who I booked, Cover Style Project, DJ Plague, like just like they're a really good agency though. Like they're a lot more informal than like say Most Wanted agency, which I've tried to reach out to before. They have like Anger Fist on their lineup, for example, and like the Destroyer, like the big names. Like they require a lot more information as opposed to maybe like Ridge or Speedcore Italia. They'll be like, oh, what's your event name? What's the exact date? What's your budget? Like what other past events have you put on? So it's a bit more inaccessible for someone who's like just phoned their first party to get in touch with agencies like that.
Yeah. All right. We only have a few more minutes left because on the Zoom free version that I have, it says it will end in 10 minutes. So we have 8 minutes left right now. I might go back and maybe in my DAW and edit this part out of the audio. Um,
Yeah, no worries, man.
but I was gonna ask you one last question, and then if there's any other comments or questions that you wanted to ask or make after that. The last question that I have that I was curious about is what do you think is the future of electronic music? Where will it be in 5 years, 10, 20, or maybe even 30 years? How do you think it will be similar, and how do you think it will be different?
So this kind of scares me because of the obvious massive rise of AI recently. I feel like is going to make a massive influence on electronic music, and it already has.
Mhm.
Like I feel like that'll be the main big difference. I feel like similarities wise is I feel like recently a lot of people, especially myself, have appreciated the older sounds, and like there's kind of been a renaissance of like the older kind, especially like the older gabber like 90s kind of sound like has gotten a big resurgence here in the UK recently. There was a big party back in the 90s called Resurrection in Scotland, and they done like a homecoming gig a couple of years ago, which was like probably the best rave I've ever been to. Like it was all like most of the people there were like in their 40s, 50s, like
Mm.
and then there was obviously like some of the young crowd, but that was like it was like Lenny D, Ultrasonic, Roughneck, the Dark Raver, like all those like 90s DJs, and it was just such a better vibe and stuff. So I'm hoping that like that kind of stays alive, like the older sound as well as like of course like as technology advances, so will the sounds. And I'm just hoping that AI doesn't overshadow a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really hoping that the masses at least will still see value in human-made art or human-derived art, and I'm hoping that maybe there's not going to become like a monopoly from major record labels about either creating AI music so that it um, oversaturates real talent. But I do think that there's always going to be value in human-made music, and that people are always going to seek out and listen to human-made
Yeah,
music.
of course. That's why I've been trying to like. I bought a load of hardware recently, and then like I just need to get the focus to actually sit there and like record more live sessions. Like the latest track that I'm working on, which should be out pretty soon, is like part of my Curiositive alias, which is I used a cassette recorder that connects to the radio hooked up to my sampler and like recorded all the stuff off that, as well as like there's a website through this Dutch college that have got like a antenna that you can feed into any radio frequency across the whole planet. So I found a lot of like feedback noise kind of stuff from that, and a lot of just like weird like number station stuff and like strange like Japanese state studios playing music box music. So I've like mixed that in with a lot of like sounds from my noise box and my synth, just like effects added on top, as well as like running it through like guitar distortion pedals and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like for me personally, one of the reasons why I invested more in hardware and studio equipment is that it definitely gives things more of like a human element to
Mm.
actually be able to put your hand on something and hear how turning the knob changes the sound. Because when you capture that, then you're capturing something unique that can't be replicated exactly with digitally with a computer or an algorithm.
Yeah, I find it pretty difficult to use like digital synthesizers like Serum, for example. Like I've used a few things with that, but when it comes to using digital stuff, I do tend to use a lot of presets and kind of just edit the presets as opposed to trying to doing it from scratch. Whereas like as you said, with like physical hands-on, like it feels a lot more natural, and it feels like you can get, even if you don't really know what you're doing, you can kind of figure it out more just by like actually physically touching it, as opposed to just like turning knobs on a screen and just like hoping that it changes. Like
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a few minutes left. Are there any more questions or statements that you wanted to say before we end this?
um just follow me up on SoundCloud, Instagram, Soft Orchestra with a zero for the O's on Instagram, Fetcore, Phetkore on Instagram. SoundCloud will just be Soft Orchestra without the O's. Um, that's it pretty much, and stay hardcore, I guess.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man.
I'll talk to you later.
See you later, man. Have a good one.
Okay. That concludes the interview with SoftOrchestra. Now we're going to start listening to a Q&A from another UK artist of extreme music, Eater of Sheep. Before we get into that, I did have an announcement in case anybody is tuning into the show later and missed the intro. But in order to continue running my show Stygian on Sonic Sky Radio, I will need to get a certain number of submissions and sponsors in order to keep the show productive. I'll have to get a total of $50 per show by February 9th through a combination of song submissions and Patreon sponsors. This show has been building a lot of momentum over the past few weeks. At the beginning of the year, I had about 800 streams in a week, and I was quite surprised by that. A couple weeks later, my show that featured the Low Entropy interview got streamed almost 3,000 times, and the average listener retention rate increased from 38 to 48 minutes. Despite that, I've still not been getting enough song submissions from independent artists to be able to continue the show, so hopefully this momentum keeps building, and this next week I'll get a lot more submissions and Patreon sponsors. I wanted to share a personal story to help put things into perspective. Back in 2023, a quote-unquote superfan heard my music and learned about my story and the health issues I struggled with, and he believed in me so much that he donated about $4,000 to my music project from an inheritance that he received from his deceased aunt. I used that money to enhance my music setup, including getting a new laptop, new DAWs, new speakers, as well as buying a professional campaign on SubmitHub. Now, SubmitHub is another pay-to-submit website similar to Sonic Sky Radio, and I purchased 3,000 credits for a little over $2,200. I got rejected from curator after curator after curator because my music didn't fit the very specific vibe they were going for, which often seemed arbitrary and based on the whim of the curator. Of all the submissions I made and all the money I spent, I only got accepted on a handful of playlists, which generated a few thousand streams on Spotify. So for over $2,000, I got a few thousand streams. I have already achieved that with Sonic Sky Radio for so small of a price it is virtually negligible compared to the amount of money I poured into another pay-to-submit platforms, which didn't end up leading to much. The reason why I mention all of this is because so long as your track fits the genre and the style of my show, I would still like to present it, even if it's not 100% up to industry standard. I still want to hear it, and I still want to play it, because we can study your submission and we can learn from it in order to all become better artists. So that's just a bit of food for thought of what it's like nowadays to be an independent musician, and why I jumped for the opportunity to join the Sonic Sky Radio team. Alright, enough blabbing, let's get into the Eater of Sheep interview. One of the things I like to discuss on my show is the concept of labels. You run a label called Exertone Regeneration. How would you describe Exertone Regeneration? What is its goal?
The goal is to make Exertone great again, and Exertone is the best style of music ever, and around 2019 it was sort of slipping and it was getting a bit flat. There was a lot of like pre-AI slop, so it was kind of combating that, bringing new life to Exertone, sort of encouraging artists to actually put effort in, so like releasing things like cassette tapes, vinyl records, and being a bit selective about who we released music from. So reaching out to people like Piltzkrieger, who went on to like pioneer like Kellersynth and Tanselcore, and Diabra, who everyone in all speedcore circles has heard of, and MG Mucus, who pioneered like Flextone and coined the term Flextone, and was doing all sorts of wild stuff in VCV Rack before anyone else was, as far as I know. So yeah, it was pooling together the best minds of Exertone to continue Exertone's legacy, starting with, say, the 1000 plus, well, starting really with Glitch City, the releases on there, and then sort of taking over from Glitch City as like the sort of key source of Exertone was the 1000 plus label, and then taking over from that was Exertone Records, And then as that started to decay, then you've got external regeneration. That's where I saw it. And now that I'm starting to have less and less time for extratone, I see this as sort of like, and we're about at like the handing over the baton stage that I think in sooner, I would hope that say DJ Angie's label, Punishing Music, or Richie Cole's label, Hypertone Records, I think I think those will take over from external regeneration. It's not meant to last forever. I'm just keeping it going. There will always be some outlet on the internet for spewing out extratone, and right now we are the place. Extratone regeneration.
Your label is known for pretty much exclusively releasing a style of electronic music called extratone. For the uninitiated, how would you describe what extratone is?
At first, it's a bit like speedcore, so really fast, aggressive, hardcore, but played at several thousands of beats per minute. So at that point, around then you stop hearing the individual kick drum beats that hardcore, terror, speedcore all revolve around. And instead you're left with the continuous tone sound. And it sounds really stupid because it is. And if you play those tone sounds in isolation, you might as well be listening to a square wave. And it's even more so the case at the high-end tempos, what I like to call supertone, because then it really is just an awful, sharp, squeaking, whining sound, and I absolutely love that. It's all context dependent, so if you're listening to hardcore techno and then you become a bit desensitized, you've listened to a bit too much Anger Fist, you might appreciate a little speedcore, a little terror, just something faster, more extreme to wake you back up. And yeah, extratone takes you on a little micro version of that journey in every song, and then it goes further a bit. So you need like a little warm up, say, I don't know, 200 BPM, 300 BPM or something, and then after a few minutes speeds up until suddenly like you're just going ballistic listening to the worst, most abrasive non-musical sounds you've ever heard.
What do you think is the future of extratone? Where do you see it in 5, 10, or even 20 years?
So you can do a lot with the idea of tones. One emerging technique is to play these extratone drums at very specific tempos that match the frequencies of musical notes. So back in the day, remember doing this 10 years ago, you'd have to grab yourself a Casio calculator, look up the frequencies of specific musical notes, and then multiply that by 60 to figure out the tempo and beats per minute that you need your drums to be playing at to recreate that musical note, and then having to vary the tempo throughout your track to match these notes to like play a melody. And I remember spending hours doing this and it sounding absolutely awful, which was a waste of time. But nowadays we have things like VCV rack and modular synthesis and all these tutorials on YouTube that make it very accessible. And with that, it's a lot easier to moonwalk along that border between tempo and pitch, because tempo and pitch really are the same thing, and like you can do a lot playing with that idea. And with it being sort of accessible and something you can automate, you can get that to actually sound good. Artists like Sun Hayosa have really like popularized that, although I think he still might be using the calculator method. I don't know if I'll let him in on my secret. Use VCV rack. Also, if you are using VCV rack or the modular synthesis tools, you get to produce a slightly more organic, living kind of sound when you're altering these tempos. So if you use something like a sort of slew limiter, you can gradually shift between one tempo and like another pitch, and you can just get much fancier extratone that way. I see that becoming much more of a thing moving forward. There's this other idea that's grown in recent years called hypertone. So as the drums get faster and faster, they start to lose more and more qualities. So like extreme speedcore loses a lot of the rhythm that, say, terror has, and extratone starts to lose all the percussive qualities of that speedcore sound. So you've just got this tone with the texture of the bass drums and the horrendous supertone squeaking sounds I mentioned earlier. At that point, you don't really even have the texture of the drums. And hypertone does the slightly unthinkable, goes one further, and loses all of the sound itself by going above the audible or recordable frequencies. So somewhere in like the millions of beats per minute, like above what the human ear can do, and above what the wave files can actually store. So all that's left over are these like quiet leftover glitches, remainders, rounding errors from your software. I've always been quite dismissive of hypertone, like it doesn't appeal to me, but people keep talking about it, and there's actually a Bandcamp page called Hypertone Records, exclusively putting out this style, and it has this like compilation, and to be honest, the bits that appeal to me in that are just the normal extratone and supertone bits, and then you've got some quiet hypertone buzzing, and it's like, I don't get it. It goes over my head, but that's probably the future, and I'm probably a dinosaur who's going to get left behind.
Let's discuss the concept of playing live. When you're playing this type of music at a party, what type of hardware or software do you use?
So since about 2020, when I discovered modular, nearly all of my music, with a few recent exceptions, has been played and recorded live, and for that I'll use VCV Rack. Sometimes when I was making like shit tones as Spider-Man, which is just Spider-Man with some letters swapped about, then I'd do that with like FL Studio or something. I really like producing music in a really relaxed, free-flowing like way, and then surprisingly at parties I'm like the exact opposite. I'm quite an intense control freak. I have a vision that I want to follow through with. So I never took the time to learn the hardware seriously, so I always use just a laptop but with 2 bits of software, normally simultaneously. So I'll start with whatever like free mixing software I have on my computer. I think right now it's something called Mix, which is like the word mix but with multiple X's. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I use the automatic beat matching tools, and I use these built-in tools that tell you what the tempo of your tracks are. So say I've got it might technically be like an 8,000 BPM track, but the software will do a bit of maths and calculate, divide that by 64 and you've got 125 cycles per minute or something, or it's saying 125 beats per minute. And rather than like correcting that, I kind of realized, oh no, that is really quite a useful like bit of information it's given me. So like that's the sort of tempo that the patterns that these tones are making are going at. So then rather than beat matching necessarily, I'm like synchronizing these patterns. So something going at 125 cycles per minute, I'll then start speeding that up. Say it's 180 cycles a minute. I'll start speeding that up until it matches a 200 cycles a minute track, and then start speeding those up together. And as the first one fades out, then the next one might say synchronize that 200 cycle minute track with this 240 cycle a minute track, or maybe drop that down so it syncs with a 120 cycle minute track. I've made that sound a lot more complicated than it is. But basically, you can get the tempo to always feel like it's going up, even if you're then matching it with something that it then thinks is slower. So you get this like sort of shepherd's tone or barber's pole illusion type trick. And it never ever works. I've tried doing this in individual tracks, and that never ever works effectively on an individual track. But in a mix, and it would have to be an extra mix, I can't see this working with any other style, but in an extra mix, it works like magic. I think that the tracks are just like complex enough and have enough up and down in them themselves that you can get them to just always feel like they're getting more and more intense as they're going along, without ever like spoiling the trick and without ever actually like getting a recognizable loop that ruins the illusion for the listener. Oh, and I mentioned I use a second piece of software, so I very lazily made something I call Textratone, which I made into like some sort of acronym which is short for like terminal extratone or something. It's just this like old-fashioned like software that looks like it's from the 1970s, and I use that for like just blasting, sort of designing and like generating and blasting out very specific like ideas for extratone elements I have, just as and when I want them. So say I've got a mix with lots of low frequency, slower tones, or like bordering on speedcore, I can then supplement that with higher frequency supertones. So then you've got like more of a full experience from it. Or if there's like an ambient break section in a track, like some spacey sounds sort of filling out, and the audience is getting a bit too relaxed between the tones, I can just blast these and like just catch them off guard. Yeah, basically the equivalent of like running around with an air horn and just scaring people.
What advice do you have for people who want to start producing this kind of music for themselves?
Honestly, I think the best advice I could possibly give is to just go outside and do something else. Just go outside, touch grass, and only come back if you really, really, really can't resist making some. Because it's probably not the best use of your time, and especially not if you're trying to emulate another artist. So like listen to a wide mix of artists before getting involved. There's a really good Extratone compilation, I think from 2011, called Assorted Extratone Peasantry. And I'd listen to that first, and then maybe listen to the Extratone Sampler series that Lico put out on Extratone Records, and then listen to like the Extratone Redemption Volume 1 compilation. Just get like a really broad like view of like what Extratone can do. If you want to make some Extratone, like listen to what's already out there and make something new from that. And yeah, just have fun. Don't try too hard. Extratone doesn't need to be clever. It is just a really stupid style of music, but it's really fun. And if it stops being fun, do something else. So like, I spent absolutely months trying to make this album called Vendian Machines, and I didn't finish it. I released it early, and I felt miserable and I felt burnt out, and stopped making music for a while after it. And that is just like the worst possible thing you can do. Like, if you're not having fun, do something else. I made another album called Neoproterozoic Nostalgia, and it basically sounds the exact same as Vendian Machines but slightly better, and I actually had fun making that. And yeah, that took less than a week. Absolutely flew by. That is the way to make music, and that is especially the way to make Extratone. If you're taking it too seriously, Extratone doesn't sound good when you're being serious.
Let's talk for a bit about your own personal music project. When did you first start making music? What is the future of your music?
I started making music around the end of 2013. I've almost exclusively produced Extratone, and I have almost no interest at all in making any other style, like even ones I love listening to. I just love making something into Extratone. Like, I could start making a hardstyle song of something, and I would just there would be this voice in my head saying, "Speed it up, speed it up." Like, add some snare rush, and like don't end the snare rush. Like, keep adding more drums to the snare rush, and it's like, oh, I've got Extratone again. Like, it's just too fun not to make. So yeah, I don't even try making anything else. I think I found what my style was around 2017, so that's when I started releasing tracks on Extratone Records. So I released Weed Killer, Butterfly Poison, and Breathe, and others. And I think, yeah, during that phase I was listening to a lot of early hardstyle, which I'd been listening to for years before then, but particularly then I was as well. So I had like climax sets like Deepak from 2003, that kind of thing. And you'd never be able to tell when listening to the Extratone tracks that that's what my inspiration was. But I think that's why it's quite a lot darker, sparser, but more dancey than most of the Extratone. Like, I didn't feel any need to fill this like blank space with musical notes. Not that I'd have been able to compose a melody anyway, but yeah, I just like I liked the sort of cold sparseness of it. Just left it at that. And then in the 2020s, so like around 2020, 2021, I was starting to experiment a lot more with, I've said this word so many times already, with modular synthesis. And that's when my music started, that's when I started like making it quite a lot denser and adding melody, and instead of it all being atonal and sparse. I was really tempted to use a different alias for that style. Like, I felt like it just wasn't Eater of Sheep. It's like, oh, this needs a new name. But I didn't come up with a new name, so it's still just Eater of Sheep. And that's when I made Neo-Proterozoic Nostalgia and Vending Machines. And yeah, as I mentioned, I got a little burnt out after Vending Machines, so I didn't come back until 2024 when I tried sort of combining that old style with the sort of danceableness with the melodic style. And I'm quite happy with some of the tracks I made then. So like I made Malacandra and Lick It and a few others, but the music didn't feel as me. Like I like the sparseness. Like Weed Killer is still my favorite track from myself. If that's not too self-absorbed a thing to say. I did also do a bit more of the modular stuff with Morella Morpha. I'm not sure why I didn't return to making just the sparse like Weed Killer style track again, but I think that was I think other people can just do it as well. So and I've already made that style, so just I'd moved on. And generally, yeah, I don't have plans for the future. I've done everything I set out to do with this style. I'll probably inevitably come back in a few years. So many times I've told myself I've quit, and then I come back. Like there's always something like just really inspiring. But I have done everything I've set out to do. I have no plans for the future at all.
One thing I'm interested in is non-musical sources of inspiration. Where do you get inspiration for making music besides other songs?
There was this game show I used to watch. So this is from the like 90s to the early 2000s. And it was called Robot Wars, where there'd be like teams of robot builders. And they would bring in these 100-kilogram fighting machines that they'd built, and they'd armed with like axes, spinning blades, saws, flipping arms, like and so on, like these fighting robots. And it's quite difficult to get across in words, but these robots, to me, like vaguely have their own personalities and auras. Like there's something quite animal-like about them. So I'd try to like, I don't know if I was even trying to recreate their personalities in tracks, but like the project names for things when they were saved on my computer, they'd normally be called something like Terahertz, Razor, Hypnodisc, like named after these fighting robots. So surely, I reckon, even subconsciously, like that must have been a huge inspiration. And quite consciously, robots with spinning weapons, you see a lot of them on like modern shows like BattleBots, although it doesn't quite get across the inspiration that I got from them. But on these shows, you've got these robots with like massive spinning weapons nowadays, like spinning at like thousands of RPM, that is like rotations per minute, or revolutions per minute. And yeah, these when you're there like in person, or on like when you're watching like raw footage, they produce this like hum, because these blades are like beating the air thousands of times per minute, and it produces this sound that's like sometimes called in these circles the death hum. And that is basically extratone, like, but except this is like extratone that actually has the potential to do like massive amounts of physical damage. So how could that not be inspirational for extratone? But the more like organic sounding tracks like Morella Morpha, anything in the Vending Machines, Neo-Proterozoic Nostalgia albums, that's really quite inspired by like just actual prehistoric animals. So especially like there's this really weird period of time called the Ediacaran period, which comes before the well-known Cambrian period, and then like life is just really weird, and instead of having all these like bilaterally symmetrical animals that have like a left side and a right side, life is being really weird, and you've got triradial symmetry and like just all sorts of like oddly shaped creatures. It's like, and yeah, that's just like quite an inspiring like period of time, as is like the Triassic and the Cambrian periods, like so that's why a lot of tracks are like named after prehistoric animals like plesiosaur, and Morella Morpha, which is just this really intricate looking, or certainly the fossil of it, or renderings of the fossils of it I've seen, have this like just really intricate, like crazy looking hexagonal shape, and yeah, it's just brilliant. Yeah, I find that really inspiring. And and there was another track called Aurora Lumina, which was released like basically just shortly after made and released shortly after like the discovery of this new creature called Aurora Lumina.
Do you think extratone or elements of it will ever gain widespread appeal, or will it continue to remain an obscure and underground style?
I'd see it as maybe in a few years or like decades splitting. Like I think quite a lot of the music that we are currently calling extratone, when reviewing this, like looking back from a few years in the future, we'll probably have some other name for it by then. And I think extratone, that word, will become synonymous with the straightforward style of music that me, Pilzkrieger, Fleischwater have like sometimes referred to as like primitive or raw extratone. And I think that will always stay quite niche and underground, and it wouldn't have the appeal if it wasn't. There's quite a beauty to keeping extratone simple, so like you sort of strip back the formula, have fun with it, but like without doing anything too clever, not going out your way to like add too fancy of a melody to it, or just keeping it brutal, like really keeping it stupid. I think this is like the style that like Ralph Brown is still rolling with, and it just works really well. Pilzkrieger did it really well. Fleischwater brought it back after Pilzkrieger with like under various aliases, and I think moving forward, DJ Angie from Brazil, he's going to be the one to like watch out for in that style, in that just pure brutal, like keep it plain, keep it dark style. But that's going to stay niche. The more modular, slightly melodic, flowing style of extratone, I can see that being like paradoxically ambient, and like possibly even widely appealing music. So even under the comments on like conventional, like brutal extratone tracks, you'll often see someone saying something like, "Does anyone else find this oddly soothing?" And there'll be loads of likes and like comments saying, "Me too." And I can see that like there is something musically to do there, but at the time that is fully exploited, I don't think it'll be calling itself extratone anymore. And I think whatever we're doing that's sort of tapping into that, like my Neo-Proterozoic Nostalgia album, or like I said, the dark, sorry, not what's it called, like sort of sad extratone, like, or the melodic extratone stuff that like Synoco is doing. I think that will be kind of seen as a precursor for some other style of music that we don't have a name for yet, and that could have wider appeal.
What are some things that you enjoy doing in your free time besides listening to or making music?
I like swimming, and I like swimming a lot, and I like swimming outdoors. I honestly talk about it too much, and even like in sort of like musical circles, it started to leak out into there. Like I keep talking about swimming, and that's basically where I spend all of my free time right now. Yeah, just ice swimming, long distance swimming. Kind of got the idea of like Scotland to Ireland North Channel swim on my radar. But yeah, I talk about that way too much. I used to enjoy computer programming a lot, and now I do that as a job. So now I do something else. Like I don't want all of my time to be on that. I would get square eyes. So just stay outdoors, stay active. That's it.
Do you see value in investing money into music, or do you prefer keeping it an inexpensive hobby?
There is value in it, but I'd say it's for other people and not for me. So all of the music that I have made has been with, say, the free version of FL Studio, or using LMMS, which I've actually returned to quite recently. Sometimes like sort of custom-made other free software, like what I mentioned when talking about like live events and stuff, like that software. I suppose like with extratone, it's really quite different, and what's useful for making trance isn't necessarily useful for making. It certainly isn't useful for making flextone. I don't even. So yeah, all the software's been like free, and even on the hardware, I don't spend on it. Like, and the most expensive headphones I've had for producing have been like £20. And I've often used like cheap in-ear earphones. I did buy a laptop for producing like fairly recently, but I actually just use that for other things. I think I've made like 2 tracks on that. Like, yeah, I don't see much point in spending on it, and I think that even though free software is limited, I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that these limitations are great for getting creative, like thinking, what can I do with that? How can I work around that? How can I push that? Whereas if you can do truly anything easily, then it's like, why? When I can do anything, I end up doing nothing.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about Extratone, and how would you address it?
I think quite a few people have this idea that Extratone is something that used to be bad, but has now been made good by like more melodically inclined artists. And artists like Dibera, Lysergide, they do it really well. Like I'm not knocking them at all, but I think there's maybe like a sense in which people are enjoying the music despite it being Extratone, and then they like the music because it overcomes this like downside of like having the Extratone stuff. Whereas I think just raw plain Extratone, there is a huge amount of enjoyment to be had from that. And I'd say just listen to like classic tracks. I think there's Extratone Does Not Exist by Sir Freddy Flip Flop, and Grand Upper by Septuplet. Those are like really fantastic, simple, non-melodic, like just pure rhythmic tracks. And I honestly prefer those over like over most melodic tracks. They're really there's a lot to just raw, simple, taking it black Extratone. Another misconception I hear a lot is just the parroting the Wikipedia line, like speedcore is an extreme subgenre of Extratone starting at 1,000 beats per minute, and it's like there's nothing special about 1,000 beats per minute. Obviously there was like the 1,000 plus label, which was like hugely influential, like it's run by Ian Garside, DJ Ninja Love Mistake. But even he didn't actually see anything like particularly special about 1,000 as like a tempo. And then the on his like Tumblr account, still like immortalized as like just some post where it's like just sharing like the Einrich 3,600 BPM thing, like sort of saying, oh yeah, this is what Extratone is actually about, by the way. 1,000 plus is like basically just like a pragmatic like limit, because of like people like software. She's like, not everyone could get to like 4,000 million BPM back in the day. And really, I'd say the appeal of Extratone, especially all these like sort of variants of it that we have nowadays, is completely different to the appeal of speedcore. And increasingly, we're not even like necessarily using like speedcore drums or anything to produce the Extratone sounds. Like MG Mucus, like quite proudly, like said after he sent me the tracks for was it for the spliff tape, I think. Just said, oh yeah, there's not a single kick drum in this. I've made like just like this extra, like using just distortion and other sounds. Like, yeah, just big middle finger to speedcore. We are not speedcore, but we love speedcore.
And finally, what is one thing you wish you had known when you first started making music?
Well, I started making this in about 2013 when I was about 13, maybe 14. So I think my advice to me then, the thing I should have known back then is that showering is like really quite a good thing. Like you should shower more, and I should have known that I probably smelt and that my room probably smelt. Yeah, just normal teenage advice. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So first question, let's start by having you explain a little bit about yourself and your music.
Well, my name is Wessel, also known as Lord of Speed. I'm from the Netherlands. I am 33 years old. I mainly produce speedcore and Extratone, but on the side I also produce a lot of other different styles of music. I like to experiment a lot, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you're mostly known for your speedcore productions. You said you also produce Extratone and some other genres, but what was it that initially inspired you to make speedcore?
That have been DJ Plague from CSR. When I was younger, I always went to this chat room on speedcore.ca on Thursdays, because there was a radio show who Plague hosted called This Is Terror Radio. And in those days, I got inspired by what he did. I was really in awe of him. Like, holy shit, what he does, I want to do too. Yeah. And so, and he was also really supportive. Like, he actually gave me tips and listened to my first work and shit, and gave me like advice on how to start and continue and everything. So that he's basically the main reason I started producing speedcore.
What did you say the artist's name was? I didn't catch that.
DJ Plague from Canadian Speedcore Resistance.
DJ Plague?
Yes,
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of them before.
from CSR. CSR. The logo is really known. It's the
What
white
country
scroll
is the
with the circle around it.
what country is that artist from?
Canadian. Canadian
Canadian.
Speedcore Resistance is the label.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's interesting because I never really thought of like Canada as some place where there's really much of a speedcore scene. I always thought of it as bigger, like in the Netherlands, then also other certain. I mean, I know there's like Speedcore Italia, and then last week I interviewed a couple artists from the UK.
Yeah.
But in the Netherlands, what is the speedcore scene like, and how is it like online compared to the in-person parties?
Well, in the past, like a couple of years back, it was more prominent, I think. Like we had the bigger names like Noise Kick, Noise Fucker, Bonehead, Prince of Darkness, The Untitled, and those guys. Most of those guys or they are like retired or they quit or they are doing something else. And now it's mainly like more on the internet, like more with the net labels and shit. Like you have Imel. Imel is also from the Netherlands.
Oh yeah.
You have me. And let me think. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Ramon, he organizes Legion of Speedcore, the parties. And he also produces under DDSL and under Disintegrator. And then you have other friend of mine called Conquer Bastard. Those guys are also not really that active, but at least Ramon still organizes parties. But next to that, it isn't really active in the Netherlands. So really.
Okay. So these are all like artists that you know from the Netherlands. Do you know them like in person, or are they mostly like online friends still?
All of the guys except for the older generation, all the newer guys I actually know in person. I've met in real life and shit.
Like parties and stuff.
Yeah. Like I met at When Noise Replaces Life from Chorista Project in Czech.
Oh,
when
okay.
we had to play there. And Ramon and Erik Kunkel Bastard and the Disintegrator are like close friends of mine. They are actually like from where I come from, where I first lived. They are also from that origin. That location.
Yeah, I recognize some of the names like from the net label scene that you mentioned, like Kerwa Style Project. I think you said Cunt Kill Bastard. What was it? Prince of Darkness. I think Prince of Darkness actually, I don't know if they're still active, but he used to have a project with Black Death because I used to talk to that artist as well.
Yeah, that's correct. If I'm right, Black Death took over like the thing in the STK in the Speedcore Terror Kinetic.
Yeah, that was it. Speedcore Terror
It was Bonehead and Prince of Darkness and RDZ, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure about it, but they had a bit of a fallout and the Black Death took over.
Oh, okay. So let's say then, like, if somebody is new to speedcore, they want to start learning more about it. Are there any artists or albums that you would recommend to them as kind of like essential speedcore listening to familiarize yourself?
For me personally, you really have to go to Germany because Germany is like the speedcore country in my eyes. Like you have the guys like Kreislaufstörung, Qual Commando, Disco Kant, Deutschlager. You have Igoa. Those guys all have their own unique sounds when it comes to speedcore. Like Igoa is more like the techno-ish speedcore. Kreislaufstörung is really aggressive and distorted. Deutschlager also, but more chaotic. Disco Kant is more how you say it's more also aggressive, but not as chaotic as a Deutschlager. And then you have Disco Kant is also on the part of this aggressive, but it's still a different sound. They all have like their unique sound. So that I would tell people like check those guys out. But in the internet label scene, like Speaker Worldwide from Torsten, he does a really good job about with promoting a lot of different and also new coming artists. So if they want to like also promote themselves or get a bit into the scene, then they should contact him.
Yeah, Speedcore Worldwide. Weren't some of your early releases on there as well?
Yes, correct. I have I released a solo album on there and a couple of APs and side projects I also released on Speaker Worldwide.
Okay. You said earlier that speedcore actually is bigger in Germany as opposed to the Netherlands.
Yes.
That's interesting. So I thought like I always associated Germany as being more like techno and like, Berghain and stuff like that. And then I associated Netherlands with more like Gabber and like hardcore.
Yeah, I can understand it, but it's like Germans are crazy people. Like they do all the music styles they do it into extreme levels. It's like their techno scene, the tech with the 2Ks. It's like the more raw and simple, but really bassy and pushy techno sound that you don't find anywhere else. But when it comes to speedcore, but that's maybe my personal taste, the speedcore, nothing can compare to the German guys. Like they have such legendary names and such artists that are like made like the first steps, or how you want us to call it, like the foundation of speedcore, really, in my eyes. Like in Netherlands, we also have a couple of guys, but those guys are all like they quit or they became really commercial, and that's personally for me is that a no-go, like for the speedcore scene.
Okay. Yeah, I think I actually remember the term speedcore came from an album on Lenny D's label, Industrial Strength. It was, I think, called New York City Speedcore. Have you heard of that track?
Yes, of course, I have heard of that track. That's funny because that's also why CSR, Plague, it's called Canadian Speedcore Resistance, but they mostly produce terror, because in America and in Canada, everything above the 200 BPM was considered speedcore. That's what he told me. So that's why the term actually came from there. And in the Netherlands, you had more the terror. The terror became more a thing. And then the Germans took the term speedcore and brought it to like extreme levels. Like the BPMs went high up, and you also got like splitter core and whatever. But that's a debate on if it's the real genre or not. But I'm not going into that right now.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually not this weekend, but the next weekend I'm going to a show here in Phoenix where Lenny D is actually going to be playing along with the Outside Agency and some other artists like that.
Oh, that was right. Agency is cool, but they are more crossbreed, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some production tips for artists who want to start making their own speedcore?
Personally, I think what's really important is like your kicks. Kicks, because speedcore is mainly focused on the kick drums, and you want to have a really punchy but still bassy kick. And what I always do is like in my software I use like Microtonic, for example, and then I put some distortion on it, and then I just twist knobs and shit till I have a kick I like. I export that kick as a one how it's called, a one punch, like a one sample, so as a wave. So you have a one hit kick, and then I reload it into Fruit Loops, and then I put a Fab Filter Saturn on it with some presets, which pumps up the bass. So you have like you start with making a kick, you export that kick as a sample, you reload the kick into your software, and then you put some other effects to push up the bass, so you still have a full kick. Otherwise, what I noticed is that if you don't do this, you sometimes the kick will sound empty, or it will have a lot of not enough low end and shit.
So kind of like having one sample that you render and then reopening that and then processing it further again after rendering it?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I have this folder on my computer with all self-made kicks who are just boom, 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 boom.
All right. Besides speedcore, then you've produced some other genres, terrorcore, hard tech, Frenchcore, extra tone. I remember as Distorted Maniac. Which is your favorite genre to produce, and in what ways are these genres similar or different to make?
Well, I actually really enjoy producing like trap metal beats, like the really distorted, hard trap beats where guys go scream over, like rap scream over. I find that really, I enjoy that a lot. I don't know why, maybe because I also enjoy the genre itself a lot. And
Yeah.
compared to speedcore, it has some similarities like the distortion, etc. But it's still like trap music is completely different from speedcore with the build up and the mix down and this kind of sounds and rhythms you use. So that's still. So I can still insert my love for distortion and for hard kicks, but also make something that's more musically, like how people like to call it, like with actual rhythms and some melodies or whatever.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy producing that and chiptune, like the old 8-bit sounds, because I'm a Nintendo freak.
Yeah. So typically people see speedcore as being very underground, but there's other genres like gabber and hardcore techno where they've seen some degree of mainstream success, like some names like Angerfist, for example, or Masters of Hardcore events are somewhat mainstream. Do you think speedcore will ever get a larger or somewhat mainstream appeal?
To be really honest, I hope not. It's for me personally, I think speakers should stay underground because that's what makes it unique. And I really see the speaker scene apart from all the other hardcore subgenres and hardcore scenes. It's its own world. Like they are really different people from the mainstream artists and mainstream partygoers because they have a really different mentality. I always say like speaker, you have to feel it and understand it. Otherwise you can't learn it. Otherwise it will just sound like noise to you. You have to really have this feeling for it. It's like I can't really explain it, but it's not something you can learn. And I really hope it will stay that way because what I notice is every time something becomes more commercial, it mostly gets ruined by the cliche things people do in the music and the partygoers who are like not the right audience for the music style. So I hope really speaker stays underground. It will never become a commercial. I don't think there's a market for it anyway.
Do you think that's what happened in the Netherlands with certain genres like gabber or Frenchcore that when bigger?
Like the hardcore on itself, like the mainstream hardcore got ruined because it became such a hype. Like you in the 90s, you had the happy hardcore, whole happy hardcore thing and shit. That was more like I see it personally as a mockery or like an insult towards hardcore because of the childish fucking little toddler niveau of music and shit and and it was purely made to make money. So I can't stand that shit. And now, personally, I find the hardcore being ruined with the whole up-tempo bullshit hype because of it's not hardcore anymore. Like, for me personally, a hardcore kick needs to have a punch and a bass. And nowadays, it's all some weird screeching sound. I don't know how to call it. Like, as soon as you can make a melody with your kick, you need to stop. That's my personal opinion, and also the scene itself, like Gabber, how it was in the past, it isn't anymore like that. Now it's more become a contest of being the most everyone has to wear the kind of outfit, otherwise you're not a real gabber, and you have to listen to this and this and this, otherwise you're not a real gabber. All these stupid rules that didn't comply, weren't there when when it started. So it really became this commercial like soap series scene almostly.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what happened in the United States with dubstep and I mean, I still like the more commercial dubstep, but I'm a much bigger fan of when it originally came from the UK, like in the mid 2000s. It was a lot more underground, and then once it became commercial and everybody kind of like jumped on that bandwagon, it just became
exactly. That's also what happened with hardcore. Like with brostep, hardcore became a bit like brostep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a shame because it's such a good scene and it has such potential and has such a meaning for people. But like every party's, you had this moment that every party, instead of only hardcore stages, they also like included a hardstyle stages, which doesn't really fit there or belong there, and that's all just because they want more money. And or like with Thunderdome, that they quit and then they did this like remembrance party, and that went so well that they decided to start again. Like oh sorry, we didn't quit. I mean, that's like, no, I don't understand that kind of thought process.
Okay. Well, regarding the future of speedcore, how do you think the sound will change as opposed to, the culture? Because it's already very experimental as a genre. So do you think in the future it will continue being more experimental, or do you think it will kind of go back to more old school roots of being more like minimalistic and distorted 909s?
Well, what I noticed lately is that it got a lot of influence from the flashcore scene, like from French, with the laser kicks and the more atmospheric, trippy sounds and shit.
Yeah.
Or that's maybe because of, I know people who are really into that shit, but I noticed that a lot of influences comes from there, because that's now become a bit more popular, like a bit more known and shit. So it could be that it goes a bit that way. But what I also noticed is that no matter what time period and what moment, there will always be like a few guys who still keeps to the old style, and still keeps like doing what they always done. And the speedcore, that's the beautiful thing about speedcore, and especially Extratone. It's like it can be anything, but also like nothing. It can be it can include all those sounds, all these different other genres and shit, and it just really depends on which artist you listen to. Like Dulcimcore uses a lot of breakcore and donk and funny samples in his sounds, but then you have the Kaiserslautern, who is just aggressive and really really noisy, and then you have like me, who I'm trying to do more like atmospheric and more like vibing, but I took that from Oost von Hate System, because I really like his music, so he inspired me a lot. But then you also have like, and then in the past you have like Noisekick. Noisekick was really simple, Fruity Loops sounding speedcore, like boterhammen kaas onder water opeten. It's just a funny Dutch sample, and but I think it always come back to the basic, like because people for example, Speedcore Gewalt, Jason, he plays really hard and really extreme sets, because he really understands the feeling and of speedcore, and people like that will keep the sound going as it is, and won't really change with all the influences that come from outside.
What are some other genres of music that you listen to besides speedcore? Do you mostly listen to extreme electronic music? I know you mentioned some of the other like terrorcore. You said you listen to some trap metal. Are there any other genres that you listen to?
I enjoy deathstep a lot.
Deathstep?
Deathstep, like the dubstep, but with mental influences, the more like heavier sounding bass drops and shit.
Yeah.
I enjoy rap, like normal rap, but then more like I'm really, really how you call it? I'm really picky when it comes to rappers, because for me personally, rap has to be or has a really deep meaning, or it has to be really hard and aggressive, like horrorcore and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, like the gangster rap with "I have so much money," blah blah, that I can't stand that shit, because it's like low IQ in my eyes.
Okay.
Next to that, I also listen to a lot of metal styles, like from everything from heavy metal to core grind to metalcore, whatever. I don't really listen to the like calm music, I think. Yeah, I can enjoy a piano, like a piano piece. I can enjoy that kind of shit. Like I can respect and enjoy the other music styles, but I'm not one who will put it on personally, like for to listen to myself. But when it's on, I can listen to it and I can enjoy and see the beauty of the music itself.
What about something like dark ambient, where it's still kind of dark and experimental, but it's not really hard?
Like I said, I could listen, but like when someone else in the room would put it on, I was like, oh yeah, cool. But personally, I think I will get bored because I miss a certain energy, a certain drive in the music that I need to really get into it. So what will probably happen is if someone would put on dark ambient music is that I will insert kicks in my head under the music that's playing. Like I will remix it in my head because then I can enjoy it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the music styles I listen to are really extreme, except for chiptune. But that's just because I have like this nostalgia for the old bit Nintendos.
Okay. What is the future of your music project?
Honestly, I don't know. Like I'm not planning to quit anytime soon. I still have like I want to do a lot more with Lord of Speed. With Distorted Maniac, I still also want to do more because those are just fun things to do. I want to focus a bit more on the trap metal, like with the rapping and the beat making and shit. Maybe I will focus a bit more on that. I also have like a lot of like side projects who were like one time or something I really want to redo something with because I still want to keep experimenting and insert stuff. I want to learn how to make that step. I want to. I like to sometimes try to make psycore, psytrance. So yeah, I am not planning to quit anytime soon. So I guess you can say that you should expect more stuff coming from also from sites you won't expect.
Did you say those stuff like the Death Step and the Psycore, were you still planning on releasing it as Lord of Speed or a different alias?
No, I have like in total I have like 12 different artist names.
Oh wow.
I'm like schizophrenic when it comes to that. I have like you've done Lord of Speed is the main name. I have Peptic is for my friends with techno. The Distorted Maniac is for my extra tone. Then I have Genital Sickness, which is a shit grind digital grindcore band. Kind of stuff with 8-bit influences. I also released the EP on Speak Worldwide under that name. Then for my Death Step, I have Rotting Weasel Corpse. For my Psycore and Psytrance, I have Space Weasel. Then as rap and trap metal, I release on the Necrophile. That's my rap artist name. Beats I do produce on the Lot of Speed. Then I have Mario's One Up. That's my chiptune alias. Then I also have Hungry Guinea Pig as a metal side project because Guinea Pig, I find it sounds really metal to me. Like it's such a sweet animal, but the name Guinea Pig is really metal to me. Then I also have I had Wezex was also a side project. I produced like all kinds of stuff under it. What do I have more? That's it basically.
Are those mostly then like side projects where you look at it as Lord of Speed is your main project and then you just kind of do that more on the side when you want to branch out to different genres?
Yeah, exactly. Most of those names also I don't really have a release with. Or what I like to do a lot is I do collabs with myself. So I do then a Lord of Speed featuring Marius One Up, for example. And then you have just my speedcore, but with a lot of 8-bit influences. Or I pick like Lord of Speed featuring like Distorted Maniac, and then it's still speedcore, but then with the distortion and noise from the Distorted Maniac alias combined.
Okay.
And that way I also am able to like create new things from the same from old stuff or from the known aliases. Then still I can create something what's unique or not really typical for what you expect from the alias.
All right. Well, I only really had one other question. And then I can kind of open it up if you just wanted to mention anything else. But what are the best ways that your fans can support your music?
Well, I don't really have merch right now. I really should start thinking about doing something like that. The best way that they can support me is to share my music. Like my music should be shared. It's free for all. So go to my SoundCloud, show your friends, show your mom, whatever, show everyone you know. That's the best way you can support me. And next to that, as soon as I have merch, then people will know, and then they can support me maybe that way. But cool. Mainly like spread the music.
What kind of merch were you thinking? Like mostly clothes or something else?
I want to make like t-shirts and sweaters, like the really cliche, like what everyone does. Then I also want to make stickers, maybe a flag would be cool. And next to that, I really don't know. Like I really should look into that, but it's really financial is like a bit of a problem for me. That's why I also still don't have any real like merch.
What about like physical releases? Do you have any physical releases?
I do. I have under Legion of Speedcore. I have one CD, the Legion of Speedcore CD, with all the remixes on it. I don't know if you still can buy it because that all went through Ramon. Then I also had this release with Distort Maniac under the Extra Tone under what's the name of the label? I can't get on the name of the label right now. Fuck. Gutter Cunt or something from the UK and
Extra Tone Regeneration.
Yeah, I think that's one. The green CD, the green black CD. And soon, I don't know how soon, but somewhere soon there will be a physical release of me doing a split with some other guy who will have a physical copies. So if people are interested in that, they can as soon as I have them, they can contact me. And
Okay.
The original releaser, of course.
Well, are there any other statements you wanted to make? Anything you wanted to talk about, or just comments before I end the interview?
Keep it speedcore, keep it underground.
Keep it speedcore, keep it underground. I like it. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on and joining me, and hopefully people that tuned in can learn something from this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This is an interview. GabberGirl interviewed me last night at the AZ Hardcore Junkies 30th anniversary party. There's a lot of background noise in the interview, but we did that intentionally so you can get a feel for what the party was like, since you can pretty much hear the whole rave while we were talking. I was also pretty tired from dancing my ass off and a bit stoned as well because cannabis is fully legal in my state, just like how it should be legal all over the world, but I also enjoy partaking. So my wording here might not be as fluent in this interview as compared to on my radio show since it's all on the fly. Most of the dialogue you hear in my show is stuff that I first scripted and then later recorded, just so there's not a lot of like, and pauses. But I think this is a very raw and unfiltered interview, and I like the way it turned out, so let's listen to it.
Okay, I'm here with Origin of Styx at a hardcore party in Phoenix, Arizona, put on by the Arizona Hardcore Junkies. I'm here to ask him a few questions. Origin of Styx, just to let you know, if you haven't heard his music, it's deep and atmospheric. I would say it's beautiful and accessible, and it's probably, in my mind, the definition of doomcore. So here he is. Why don't you introduce yourself and say hello?
Hey, this is Ethan from Origin of Styx. I'm at the Arizona Hardcore Junkies 30th anniversary party right now. It's a really great rave, probably one of the best raves I've been to in a long time. We've got 3 stages, a main stage with a lot of big name hardcore DJs, even coming in from Europe. We've got 2 techno buses here, one playing hardcore, and then the other one is strictly playing techno from the Techno Snobs.
So, do you want me to call you Ethan or Origin?
Ethan.
Okay, Ethan. I would like to understand how you came to doomcore and like what your roots are with this specific kind of music that you play these days, that you produce. Like, how did you find doomcore and what draws you to it?
Well, I first started listening to electronic music when I was around 12. I first was exposed to house and dubstep with artists like deadmau5 and Skrillex, which were really huge at the time. And then I kind of went deeper down the rabbit hole of electronic music. I started, around like 2014, I started listening to more hardcore, and then eventually speedcore, and I just kept branching out and learning more about different genres. And then when I was in high school, I started having more health-related problems, actually, and just becoming more prone to feeling fatigued, feeling depressed, struggling with brain fog. And so I started listening to more darker styles of music. I found more comfort in darker styles. But originally, I just listened to more mainstream house, techno. And so at the time I started listening to a lot of dark ambient. I first started producing dark ambient when a rapper from Poland named Vinylinks messaged me on SoundCloud. He said he wanted me to make the intro and the outro for one of his albums. And so I said I wanted to do that for him, but I didn't have the name to release this kind of dark ambient music under, and he recommended Origin of Styx, so that was where the name came from. And then around that time, I started listening to more hardcore, and I was exposed to doomcore when I realized that it's pretty much the synthesis of techno, hardcore techno, and dark ambient.
Thank you. So you've started a doomcore label yourself with your friend, who I believe is in LA. And I believe it's the first doomcore label in the United States of America. Can you tell me a little bit about that, like the name of it and how I could find it?
Yeah, we are the first US-based doomcore label. We have a Bandcamp page. I think it's morosrecordings.bandcamp.com, or if you just search Moros on Bandcamp, you should find it.
How do you spell that?
Moros.
Okay.
It was created with my friend Hecatonchires. Bit of a mouthful, but you search the label, you can find his music, my music, and we wanted an outlet for doomcore that was from the United States, because we were really, at the time, pretty much the only artists in the United States that were producing doomcore.
Right on. So tell me a little bit about your production style. Are you using actual instruments, or are you focusing on a DAW or a DAW, or do you use both?
When I first started producing, when I was like 14, 15 years old, I made all my music digitally with a digital audio workstation. I started with a cracked copy of FL Studio 10. That was my first DAW, and then I started using Ableton, mostly like the intro or the light version. And at the time it was all digital, other than maybe some MIDI controllers that I would use to play the digital synths. But then when I, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I started having more writer's block with a lot of DAWs. I ended up expanding, getting a lot more DAWs. I started experimenting with Logic, Reason, Ableton more, PreSonus Studio One. And so I tried all these different DAWs, but I still was having a lot of writer's block with them, and I started investing in buying electronic instruments, synthesizers, drum machines, finally now a music sampler, mixer, stuff like that, and I found that it's a lot more enjoyable to actually be able to put my hand on a piece of hardware and be able to hear how turning the knob actually changes the sound, or the way that the synthesizer sounds. And I found that a lot more compelling, a lot more interesting, and I stuck with it, and it's become somewhat of an addiction now, where I'm collecting all these synthesizers and collecting all these drum machines, and I'm recording them now into my DAW, so I'm doing things a little bit of both, mostly analog, but also a little bit digital.
Right on. So do you have goals for your studio? Do you have any other synthesizers you're trying to get, or do you think that you kind of have a complete studio at this point?
I have most of the things I need to make the kind of music that I want to make. I just recently got a music sampler that was I feel like a key part of my studio. I also got a drone synthesizer, like it's my first semi-modular synthesizer. I think it might be cool to get either like a second semi-modular synth to sync those two together, or also there are some kits online. There's one called MicroRack. You can search microrack.org online, where it's basically a build it yourself DIY analog modular synthesizer kit. So I want to get that, learn more about modular synthesis, but otherwise, also a noise box. It's kind of like a little acoustic instrument where you can pluck it and mix different weird ambient noises. But those are the only instruments really. Otherwise, I have pretty much everything I need to make all the kinds of styles, the genres that I want to make.
Well, I feel like you already had that just with your DAW because your album from, what was it, 2018 on Doomcore? Was it from 2018 or 2022 or something?
The first album that I put out on Doomcore Records was in 2017.
Oh, in 2017. And what is it called?
I think it's just 53 is just the name of the catalog.
Well, what about your album that came out in 2023?
2023 was Stygian, I believe.
Okay, and
I think
that's like a 7 track album or something, right?
Let me think, actually.
But you made that with a DAW, didn't you?
I made all my music with a DAW up until, I think, July of 2024. It pretty much switched and made my music now pretty much like 80 or 90% analog.
Okay. So you grew up in the Phoenix area, correct? So have you always, this is your rave scene. So have you, when did you join this scene? Like as a raver, I understand when you started making music and stuff, were you already going to parties when you were 14, 16?
I started learning about styles of dancing when I was 14, 15. Actually earlier when I was probably like closer to 12 or 13. I learned first about jump style and shuffle, although I'm really good now at jump style. I can't shuffle at all. But I also have my own kind of style where I incorporate like Brisbane stomp and drum and bass step. So I started dancing when I was like 14, 15, and then after finishing high school when I was 18, I started attending more local hardcore techno raves, which were mostly either in warehouses or they were in deserts, like underground desert raves.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I started doing it that way was because at the time I couldn't get into venues that serve alcohol.
Right.
So mostly bars, clubs, more things that I started going to later. After I turned 21, I started attending a lot more techno snob shows at the club, and I also started going to a lot more goth dance nights because there's a very active goth dance night scene here in Phoenix with lots of bars, lots of clubs hosting exclusively goth music, industrial music, and catering more to that kind of audience.
Okay. How do you think that the scene has changed or progressed in the past, 15, 20 years?
It could just be because I'm going to a lot more clubs, but I don't think the desert rave scene is as active. But again, it could just be because I'm just looking and not looking for those anymore.
Or maybe because of COVID.
Yeah, that was COVID. Definitely, a lot of the desert raves started happening less frequently when the COVID pandemic started. Because I was going, I think, pretty much either every weekend or at least every other weekend, 2 or 3 times a month, back in like 2018 and 2019 before COVID started.
Okay. So you started raving in the 2010s?
I started raving, my first rave I went to in 2018.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, that kind of concludes my questions at this point. So, do you have anything to add to this interview? Anything that you want to let this audience know about either your music, your scene, or your goals?
I would say just keep following my music, keep following my project, look it up, originofstyx.com, and also shout out to the techno snobs and shout out to the Arizona hardcore junkies for putting on such a great show tonight.
Thank you, Ethan.
Hello, thanks for coming on to the show. Do you want to first start by explaining to the audience a bit about you and your music?
Hi there, I'm SAVBEA, a vocalist, songwriter, DJ, and producer, and also vocal coach based in Prague. My music blends hypnotic and melodic techno with the live vocals and emotional performance. I create DJ set as a journey where people can dance, feel deeply, and connect with the energy of the moment.
One of the things that interests me about your project is the use of live vocals and synthesizers as opposed to just doing a standard DJ set. What influenced this approach to DJing?
I started as a vocalist at my 10 years old, so human voice has always been central to my art. When I moved into electronic music, I wanted to bring more emotion and live presence into DJing. Live vocal performance for me is a real-time connection with the audience. My voice is my soul voice. When I sing, I feel kind of euphoria with the techno. It's something I can't explain yet. Really, my emotions are so deep when I'm singing and playing, so I cannot explain how do I feel at that moment.
What is the club/rave scene like in the Czech Republic? How does the electronic music scene relate to the music scene as a whole in your country?
The Czech scene, especially Prague, has a strong underground culture and loyal rave community. Electronic music is a major part of the modern music scene here, and audience really respect DJs and live performers. It's a great space for creativity and hybrid performances.
What are some of your biggest musical influences? How did your musical interests evolve over time, and how did this impact the music you made?
I grew up with the folk, soul, neo-blues, and rock pop music. Over time, I studied in an opera music college, and classic music inspired me a lot. Example, Mozart, Queen of the Night. I really love this aria, and my dream was always to hit this note. So I did it, and now I use it in my electronic music. From electronic music, for example, I love band themes, Marco Bruno, Ukrainian producer Ira 8 Keys, and label Nechto also has many techno artists that inspire me a lot, like Anne, for example, or Lou Wave. I combine both worlds, powerful vocals, electronic sound, jazz, classic, and folk into my own hybrid style. All this you can hear in my sets and soon in my EP.
Lastly, besides DJing and performing, you also have your own school of music. What advice do you have for aspiring musicians that are just starting their musical journey?
So, my advice: focus on building real skills and finding your unique identity. Trends changed, but strong fundamentals and authenticity always stand out. Creativity grows when inspiration meets discipline. So don't give up, experiment more, and follow your dreams.
Now, let's listen to an interview by Synoco, a techno artist from India whose track was featured in last week's episode. Hello. Thanks a lot for coming on to the show. I'm very excited to interview a techno artist from India because I haven't done any interviews yet with an artist from that part of the world. Do you want to start by explaining a bit about yourself and your music?
Hello. First of all, thank you for having me. It's really exciting to represent India on a show like this. So, my name is Synoco and I'm a techno producer and DJ from India. My background actually started with music that was more melodic and euphoric, that had strong sense of emotion and energy. I started listening to EDM in 2011, so that should give you an idea on what type of music I listen to or get inspired by. Over time, I eventually got into darker sounds, which eventually led me to techno. Right now, my sound sits somewhere between a melodic emotion and the darkness of a techno track. I like music that feels powerful on the dance floor, but still carries some emotional weight to it. For me, techno is not just about being dark, it's about creating a journey that has a feeling attached to it.
You originally were more interested in producing house music with a groovy, euphoric vibe. After being assigned to remix a darker techno track by Anag, you were able to find your own style, somewhere in between dark but also groovy. What has remixing that track taught you about emotions in music? What production tips do you have to help you convey those emotions while producing a track?
That remix actually taught me something really important about emotions in music. Emotions don't always have to be expressed in obvious ways. When I started producing, I thought emotion meant big melodies, uplifting chords. But when I worked on that darker track, I realized that groove, texture, and tension can also create a lot of emotion that I personally wasn't able to fathom at that first time, to be very honest. Sometimes a simple bass line, a slowly evolving pad, or the way a percussion grooves or moves can create a feeling that is same has the same power as a melody. I mean, this track taught me that I'm still learning a lot, but creating a groovy, intricate bass line changes a lot of things, changes a lot of emotions, at least for me. So, from a production perspective, I think the few things that help convey emotions are space and tension. Like, you don't need to fill every single frequency out there. You can just let elements breathe and take up the space, take up the time. And then there is movement, like subtle movements and sounds. Like, the reason we put filters and delays and reverbs and everything, so that it moves with time. And the most important part, I think, that comes around to doing it first is that you have to select the sounds. If you can't, if you don't know which sounds work for you, or which sound will work for this track or the track that you're trying to create, will not make it the way you are thinking it to be. And to be very honest, I think in techno especially, small movements make a huge impact on the track overall and creates a bigger emotional impact, uh, rather than just staying in one place.
What is the techno music scene like in India? What kind of parties do you guys have, and what techno styles are popular?
The techno scene in India has grown a lot in the last few years. I mean, to be very honest, it has gone from like hundreds of people to thousands of people in a very short while. I mean, cities like Goa, Mumbai, Bangalore, and Delhi have really strong underground scenes. Goa especially has a long history with electronic music culture. So techno parties there can be very special. I mean, people go from all over states just to see what kind of parties are happening there. But it's interesting because India has two different electronic music worlds, like as of right now. One side you have big festival scenes, so there's like we have Sunburn every New Year, which is more EDM oriented, and on the other side there is growing underground community where techno, melodic techno, progressive sounds are becoming more popular by the day. I mean, melodic techno, I think, is the most popular genre that is being played in the clubs as of right now, after our Bollywood music. A lot of parties happens in clubs or smaller underground venues and sometimes outdoor events. The crowd that comes to techno events is usually very passionate about the music. Right now, styles like melodic techno, driving techno, and hard techno are gaining way too much popularity in India. There are also coffee raves that are happening around, which include tech house, Latin tech house, new disco. It's more on the housey end, and I mean, the scene is honestly still developing, but the energy and passion from the audience is really strong. I mean, the clubs are filled with people who just want techno or just want to enjoy the music that makes them feel something.
What is the process like for you to go about remixing a track? Do you start with the drums, bass line, or some other element? What is the most difficult part of making a remix?
When I start a remix, the first thing I try to understand is what the emotional core of the original track is. Like, what is something that I will remember? Sometimes that vocals, sometimes it's melodies, and sometimes it's just vibe. After that, I usually start building the rhythm section for me. That is usually the kick and bass, and I will continue to add more drums to it. In techno, the groove is really the backbone of the track. So I like to get that foundation right before adding other elements. Then I start experimenting with atmospheres, textures, while keeping with the original idea of the track. The next part that really changes things for me is the melodies or the sounds that make it a complete song. Sometimes that's from the original itself, or I'm creating my own. And to be very honest, if an original contains a vocal, I am genuinely picking that up no matter what. Then I think the most difficult part then becomes is to find the balance between respecting the original track and finding your own sound in it, because sometimes you just end up creating a similar vibe which might not work for remix. At least I want a different vibe, and you also kind of want to people to recognize the original idea, while at the same time they should listen to your remix as something different, or at least it should feel different, it should sound like this is different, or at least from this artist.
What types of software or hardware do you use to produce your music? Do you prefer making techno entirely in the box, or do you also like recording from hardware as well? Is there a certain VST plugin that you like using?
So most of my production is done in the box. I do not own any analog things as of right now, other than few MIDI keyboards. I mainly use DAW with VST plugins to design sounds and arrange the track. Modern plugins are incredibly powerful, so you can do almost everything you need without external hardware. For techno production, I really enjoy using tools that allow a lot of sound shaping and modulation, because small changes in sound over time are very important in this genre. So I'm mostly automating a lot of things around a synth. I'm To be very honest, I'm interested in hardware and analog gear. I think it can add a lot of unique character to the sound. I'm still trying to learn a lot about it, but have no idea where to start. And but that is kept a little on the side. I'm right now focused on what's the best I can do with what I have right now.
Finally, in what ways does the lifestyle and culture of India impact the music that is made there?
So India is a very diverse country culturally, and I think diversity naturally influences the music. There are many unique instruments and voices in India. I mean, we have a whole different music theory system when it comes to Indian music, to be very honest. I can talk about it, but honestly, I also do not have too much idea about it. That's something we can definitely explore. Even when producers here are making techno, you can sometimes hear subtle influences from Indian rhythms, atmosphere, and melodic ideas that we have grown up with. So, but I think the biggest influence in India is actually the energy of the culture. India is a very intense, vibrant place. There's always movement, sound, and activity around you. That kind of energy often translates into music that feels very alive and dynamic. At the same time, places like Goa have a long history of underground electronic music culture. So there's a strong connection between local artists and the global music community. I mean, there's a whole label named after a beach in Goa. So Anjuna Deep, there's a beach in Goa that is named Anjuna, and the label is based off that. So because of these mixes of influences, I think Indian electronic music scene has the potential to develop a very unique voice in the future. And as more and more people discover it, I think they would finding very interesting, and it would move them in different ways.
Now we'll move on to the next part of the show, an interview with the French artist Primitik. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your music project.
So, hello. I'm Primitik. I'm 44 years old and I started producing in 2006. So I'm gonna be 20 years that I produce techno. But I really discovered this style by a friend in 2001 who shared some CD. Who shared me some CD with Manu Malin or Tribe Mix, Tribe Live from who came from Technival on free parties and from French sound system. He brought me to a free party weekend, and that was so unreal. Follow cars at 3 a.m. in the night in the campaign to stop and enter in the woods and hear some bass so loud, so far away. So arriving in the middle of the wood, so much people and the sound system, it was so strong and on power that I was blown away. What the hell was going on? I was saying in my head. So I love listening to this music and I wanted to create my own. That's how I got into production. And a friend say, start with FL Studio 3. So I crack the like a lot of people, I crack the door and I start like this. So for my artist name, it's come from the listening to the album Primitive from Soulfly. Before I was a metalhead, listening metal at the age of 13 with Megadeth, Metallica, Sepultura, Pantera. So much groups from death metal and I was going a lot of concerts, but and one day so I discovered the techno. That's it.
What are your favorite genres of music to produce and release?
So my favorite genres of music are tribe, especially because it's in France and in Europe it's most of the scene is tribe. Art techno also, art tech, and the Heretic sound system, who is a lot of art techno. And I really like also hardcore. There is the hardcore scene in France and Europe is also big. And a lot of influence in hardcore, in Gabber, doomcore, darkcore, all that styles that I really like and I practice. So I don't do one style. The same. I know sometimes I do drum and bass, breakbeat, speedcore, and now I listen a lot of electronic, so I want to do electronic now for the future.
What software and or hardware do you use to make music? Do you have a favorite DAW?
The DAW I use, like in the first question, I say it's Reason. I use Reason 12, and because it's 20 years I use it, so I don't want to change. So hard to discover a new DAW like Ableton or. I try, but I don't want to spend a lot of time to understand how it works. So I prefer keep in Reason, and there is a lot of good VST and plugins in this DAW. So I have a lot, and I'm happy with this do. I can do producing, I can do live. So I know it's not the best, but for me it's okay.
You started a label called Technoland Production. What is the purpose of the label? Where do you think the label will be in 5 or 10 years?
So for my label Technoland Production, I started in 2019 to realize an old dream, work in the music industry, but of course on a very small scale on the underground techno scene. So I put some economies to produce the two first vinyl, and the other came with the scale of distributors buying mostly in banks loans. So I can really say thank you to Toolbox Records that buy me a lot of vinyl. So thank you, Chris.
Do you prefer physical or digital releases? Why?
I prefer digital because it's easier to listen to than vinyl, and now we have a very good DAW and VST to export in good quality, but physical, of course, has a better sound and it's pleasant to produce a vinyl from the beginning to the end and know that a DJ will play into a mix. So of course, I like vinyls. And like the CD, vinyl, when you buy it, it's your contrary. It's yours, contrary to Wave, that an artist or the label can delete it on internet. So,
what is the hardest thing about managing a label?
The promotion first. I hate it. I hate this, and that's why my label doesn't work. I'm not good in communication. It's not my generation, but I started with MySpace after Music Blog and Song de Teuf. There was a real community at the time. Do post on all social networks. For me, it's not my job. It's boring, but I know it's like that today. It's like it's how it works. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc. Facebook. It's you have to spend a lot of time to post and that's how it works. So my job, so what I like, it's listen music and discover artists to promote and finance. After the money investment, make vinyl, it's very expensive, and finally contact artists to propose them to be on my label. If I was not alone, maybe I'm sure the label would work better, but I'm not very social, surely, for that also.
A lot of the music you make is focused on dark or aggressive themes like doomcore, gabber, speedcore, etc. What production techniques do you use to make a song sound dark?
So I don't have techniques for produce dark music, aggressive, like gabber, doomcore, darkcore, hardcore. It's just in your mood. For me, for example, when I'm angry, I produce so this style of music. I open Reason and let's go. So I can give a template, a tutorial like in YouTube. Use this kick, this preset, this VST. The only advice I can give is just if you're angry, put this aggressive energy on music instead of keeping it and being aggressive with people who did nothing to you, or make art, sport, video games, what you want. And with experience, your experience, you will find your way to produce. For me, it's like that. So,
when and where do you DJ? Do you prefer vinyl, CDs, MP3s, or something else when you mix?
So I'm not a DJ. I don't mix vinyls or wave. I often think about getting into but I don't have the time and the money for the moment to invest in DJing equipment, like two turntables and a mixing console. I have one turntable, but just to listen my vinyls. I just have I have always preferred creating music than mixing the music from the others. And a lot of DJ do it well, so I don't know what I can contribute better, especially since becoming a good vinyl DJ take times, and I don't have a lot of time.
What is the club scene like in France, and what is the underground rave scene like? Are there any differences between the music and culture that you hear in clubs as opposed to free techno parties?
The truth is, I don't know anything about it. I haven't gone to a real free party for 20 years since I began creating techno. So I don't know the French sense, and when my friends have made their life, I stopped going to these events, and I'm a homebody person, so I can answer this question.
What future plans do you have for Primitik?
For me, I will continue to produce on my Bandcamp and share my tracks to some labels like Doomcore Records, Rogercore and GabberGirl Records. Maybe I will continue my label Technoland Production, but I don't know. I know I listen a lot of electronic music like Alphex Twins, Board of Canada, so I'm searching for a new alias where I will create electronic ambient music. So we will see in the future.
What do you think dark electronic music will be like decades in the future? Will it be similar or very different?
The true, a lot of artists continue to produce like old school hardcore, old school tribe, early hardcore, jungle, drum and bass, etc. The new generation prefer doing their new style. It's normal. But so it will be always those old school artists and new school artists who will invent new techno styles, I think. And DJ also, old school DJ who will play old school vinyls of hardcore, etc. So I think the sense we want to change a lot in the future.
Finally, what is your favorite thing about being an electronic music producer?
So my favorite thing about being a techno producer is to create music from scratch, from the beginning, and to test a lot of things with a VST, with a sample, and create melodies, create ambience with pad, with the octave, with the filter, etc. to create ambience like in a movie or read a book and horror movie, or create psychedelic melody, psychedelics, FX, a lot of things like that. And the listener will say, wow, will be listening to the music, will be in another world, or will be forget these problems so at the beginning I was so happy to create music. I can listen it so many times and say it's me who made that. Today I feel this magic from the beginning, and for me I listen also a lot of time, but it's not like at the beginning. I'm happy, but that's it. The same for my label, Technoland Production. I was so happy for the first vinyl, and now it's just normal when I produce a new vinyl. It's like okay, it's finished, and I'm going to sell the vinyls, and so I think it's like a lot of people create. It's something very cool and important for an artist.